mic when you speak.
Okay.
Let us pray. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interests of our people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat u gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodighede wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelele elizwe letu nabantu balo umeseli ukulungu kwipondo letu. Nkosi sikelele I Afrika, tlina abantwana bayo, kokela inkokeli zayo, yenike nkolo I Afrika. All this we beg in your holy name. Amen. Order. Good afternoon, honourable members, guests, members in the House, and members on the hybrid system. I trust that all of you are connected and that you are able to hear us clearly. I'm not going to go through all the procedures as we are quite familiar with the practice of our rules while we are in the system and our standing rules and directives as on the 17th of April 2020 still apply. For the purpose of the sitting, may I just remind you, as it is only the second time we are having this privilege, is that language translation services are available both in the chamber as per normal and in Microsoft Teams via the respective channels. Honorary members participating in this sitting must please access the language translation services via a second device, that is your cell phone, for example, and if you have earphones available, please use it for the language translation services. The WCPP ICT colleagues are available to assist honourable members who are experiencing challenges with accessing the language translation services during the sitting of the House via Microsoft Teams. As ruled by the presiding officer in the House in the sitting of the House on 23 April 2020, no interjections shall be permitted during the debate. In this regard, I would also like to draw the attention of honourable members to Rule 40 of our standing rules. Honourable members, I would like to start, before we begin with the orders of the day, I'd like to start with two rulings as per the previous sitting. The first one that I have considered is related to the 3rd of September 2020. So on the 3rd of September 2020, during members' statements, the Honourable Kama raised a point of order and requesting me to rule on whether it was parliamentary for Honourable P. Murray to use the word lies. Because I did not hear such utterances being made, I undertook to deal with this point of order once I had an opportunity to study Hansard and listen to the audio. Having now had the opportunity to study the unrevised Hansard and listen to the MS Teams recording, I want to rule as follows. The verbatim Hansard report did capture the word lies being used by a member in the House. However, there is no conclusive evidence that Member Murray made the utterance. And once again, members, I'd like to state that members are reminded that the use of the word lies in any form in the House is considered unparliamentary. And I will leave the delivery of that as it is. With regards to a second ruling, on the same day, on the 3rd of September 2020, during motions, the Honourable Lacker raised a point of order indicating that she attempted to draw the attention of the presiding officers before the motion was agreed to. Having now had the opportunity to study the unrevised Hansard and MS Teams recording, it is evident that the hybrid system may result in some delays within this regard. I therefore accept Honourable Lacker's assertion that she had attempted to raise her objection to the motion of Honourable Bartman before such motion was agreed to. The motion is therefore not agreed to and recorded on the order paper for today's sitting. I trust that that is in order. Thank you, members. Order. We will now move to the proceedings of the day, and we will start with the interpolations as printed on the question paper. I recognise the Honourable Minister Simmers.
Deputy Speaker, Premier, colleagues, but more especially Member Maseko, thank you for this interpellation, given that this kind of dialogue is needed during the current plight for housing opportunities by the people of our province. With that said, I should state I was gobsmacked when I received a copy of Minister De Lille's parliamentary response to the National Assembly dated 20th of August 2020. The response clearly illustrates her unwillingness to release the suits of land in the province earmarked for human settlements development. One such example is the portion of the Itemba site, which would have yielded 3,000 housing opportunities as part of our reblocking project for densely populated areas in the metro area. This flip-flopping by Minister De Lille's department in itself is concerning, as more than 123,468 housing opportunities are now in jeopardy of being completely lost should she continue to stall on releasing these pockets of land. I do hope Minister De Lille will have the courage to face the 123,468 beneficiaries that have been waiting patiently for years for their housing opportunity. This is truly sad, Member Maseko. Maar wat het nog meer so hartseer maak, achtbare collega's, speaker, is dat zijnde Minister De Lille in haar periode as die stad Kaapstadse burgemeester die voorsanger in die koor was vir geleenthede wat hierdie spesifieke stukkies grond sou bied. Maar het lyk my sy sing nou 'n nuwe of 'n valse toon. Deputy Speaker, despite Minister De Lille's concerted effort to backtrack on a national cabinet decision, and I have brought copies of that decision with the parcels of land which was approved by the cabinet during October 2019, and also the confirmation which HTA received regarding these parcels of land. And I need to ask myself, why has this land not been released for strategic purposes in the Western Cape? Because some of these are strategically and well located and fits well within our planning as a provincial government. We have continued to try to engage our department to find an amicable solution to the stalemate. But this is certainly not a good story to tell to the residents of our province today. Member Maseko, the B part of your question, over the last 16 months to date, an assortment of correspondence has been floating between my department and Minister Lil's department, and I have brought the various proofs, some dating back to immediately after our provincial cabinet was constituted and parliament. So that gives you a clear indication how long and how patient I have been. As an assortment of correspondence, this assortment of correspondence has been floating in between our departments, and at one stage, and in this proof of fact that I've brought through to you, I've even asked the National Minister of Human Settlements to engage her counterpart at that level. But needless to say, none of these intergovernmental interfaces yielded any results. Once again, to the people of our province, this is not a good story to tell. Our 123,468 beneficiaries who would have benefited from these parcels of land are still living in squalor. Yet again, this is not a good story to tell today. At the end of the day, Honourable Deputy Speaker, Member Maseko, cheap rhetoric and party politics are not going to resolve the plight of the people of this great and beautiful province. Certainly today, this is a sad story to tell because we've attempted to reach out to our national ministers.
Your time is
Deputy
up.
Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I recognise Honourable Maseko.
Minister of Title
Thank
Deeds.
you very much, Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Minister Seamers. This is indeed not a good story for the people of Western Cape. We know that the DA is committed to providing decent housing opportunities to the most vulnerable in our society and is the only party committed to ending special apartheid in the cities where we govern. We both know that Cape Town would look very different if the ANC had not been so losers in 2011 and transferred all these land parcels to national government as a cowardly act to deliberately sabotage the DA's efforts to good governance. But their efforts were for nothing. The DA has consistently achieved the highest scores in clean government across the country. The only people to suffer were those who have been twice denied access to dignified housing opportunities, once under apartheid and again under the ANC. One only has to look at the mess of the restoration of District 6 to realize why the ANC is incapable of providing effective redress. It is said that despite Minister De Lille personally lobbying national government for the release of this land when she was a mayor of Cape Town, she is now incapable of acting, even though she has the power to do so. Perhaps she should concern herself less with building fences and more with building bridges to real housing opportunities. I know from personal visits that the potential of the Itemba is considerable, and knowing that our government already has plans for over 100,000 beneficiaries is proof that the DA puts the needs of our residents first. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Maseko. I recognise Honourable Lilly. Honourable Lilly, you're in line. Can Honourable Lilly hear me? Honourable Lilly, last chance. I don't hear Honourable Lilly. I'm going to move over to Honourable Heron.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, Member Maseko and Minister Simmers would like us to believe that this government is paralysed by the unavailability of land. They would like us to believe that the only portions of land in the custody of national government and under the authority of the National Minister of Public Works can resolve this province's housing problems. But there are two things we can observe from this. Firstly, that they are willing to play cynical politics with land, because the main objective is not to access land, but to vent their animosity towards Patricia de Lille. They simply cannot get over her and move on. Secondly, that this entire argument is a fabrication. The Department of Human Settlements has a fully allocated budget and a pipeline of housing projects for years. There's no immediate impact on the provision of housing for beneficiaries arising from land availability. The department will not immediately use the land, nor will they allocate any additional funding to build more houses if they had the land. In Dunoon, where freight trains can't run because of encroachment of informal structures on the rail reserve, the department promised to relocate these residents 2 years ago. When COVID-19 came, the department also promised to de-densify overcrowded Dunoon. Neither of these promises have been met despite the urgency, not because there's a shortage of land, but because the political leaders will not use the land that was earmarked by the City of Cape Town for housing because they say it's too politically sensitive. The availability of land is not the obstacle to housing and spatial redress. It is the anti-poor attitude of the DA and government that is the obstacle. There are processes that government must follow to release land. They know that Minister de Lille is following a lawful process in releasing land, and they know that the process is underway. This government just got a brutal lesson in how not to do it in the Tafelberg school case. The Western Cape High Court found every single thing the Western Cape Cabinet did was unlawful. Minister Simmers must tell us why they haven't used Potsdam land to resolve the Dunoon crisis, or the land in Woodstock and Salt River to build
Your time is up, Honourable Heron.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Lily, I do see you there. That's why I didn't interrupt Honourable Heron. You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mrs. Speaker, the issue of human settlement is highly emotive and one that we should not play politics with. We have a housing backlog over 500,000 in the Western Cape, with the majority of those residing in the city of Cape Town. We are having this discussion a week after the Western Cape High Court set aside the sale of Tafelberg site, a prime pocket of land in Sea Point, and ordered the city of Cape Town and the Western Cape government to draw up policies that address apartheid legacies in Cape Town. Cape Town and various parts of the Western Cape still resemble apartheid cities. The provincial government must release the land it owns, as well as land owned by various municipalities, for the purposes of human settlement. The problem is that this Western Cape expects only national government-owned land and properties to be released for the purposes of human settlement, while the provincial-owned land and the city land is disposed of for private interests. That is the crux of the problem, Mrs. Speaker. The Western Cape government and the municipalities failed to densify informal settlement as means to contain the spread of COVID-19. The national government properties released for purposes of victim empowerment centers have not been utilized, yet focus on the national government land, as if the province has no role to play in the development of human settlement. The ANC calls for a land audit of all pockets of land owned by provincial government and municipalities.
Your time is up,
The
Honourable
MEC
Member.
must tell us, when is he planning to release the land provincially owned
Thank you,
for
Honourable
human
Lily.
settlement purposes? We also call for
Thank you, Honourable Lily.
moratorium
Honourable
on the
Lily.
sale. Yes.
Order. Order, Honourable Lily. Thank you. I
Let
now
me just
recognize
finish,
Honourable
this line,
Christians.
sentence, Speaker.
Honourable Lily, you can hear me.
Yes.
I now move over to Honourable Christians.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, we saw so many protests happening in our province, people burning infrastructure and so on, and a lot is to do with land and service delivery and housing. Can Minister Simmons tell us that how many pockets of land was made available under his watch? And now with the stalemate that he have with, seemingly a stalemate that they have with Minister Hill and her department, with all the correspondence, what is he and his department going to do in order that those 123,000 people, 123,468 people are going to get their housing opportunities? What is he going to do? Because it seems to me there's a stalemate. What is he going to do further? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Christians. I recognise Honourable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I was hoping that Member Heron will have some good news for us. That Minister Delile has finally sent through the power of attorney granting the Western Cape provincial government the ability to take ownership of the land and implement projects for those 123,000 beneficiaries. Instead, we hear yet more excuses for Minister Delile. Clearly, the ANC Good Alliance is more about continuing the project of state capture rather than caring for the residents of Western Cape. As the chair of Human Settlements Committee, I will be inviting the National Department of Public Works to come and explain their lack of action and to provide clear timelines for the transfer of the land. This has been nearly 10 years of delay and a lack of accountability by the ANC, who also have nothing good to offer the residents of the Western Cape. Dear Bottomskloof community have been waiting for more than 10 years to receive their title deeds again. I'm making a call to National Minister of Public Works to transfer the land parcel to those communities who have that important sense of ownership, make it possible for Rabo to get their title deeds. Lip service won't work with their communities. You need to deliver, period. If you really care about the poor, if you really care about the poor, showcase, give us the good story, Minister Delile. Thank you very much, Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Maseko. I now ask Honourable Minister Simmons.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. That was really a feel-good response by Ms. Maseko. Thank you very much. In Afrikaans sê ons, Deputy Speaker, mens moet nie soos 'n rekord klink wat vashak die hele tyd nie, maar ek gaan nou weer eens soos 'n herhalende trek rekord moet klink aan die agbare Lily en die verteenwoordiger van Good. And that is that, firstly, Member Heron, you've contradicted yourself because 2 weeks ago in the House, you stated that the land has already been given to our provincial government. Yet today you state the National Minister is not following due process. So you've contradicted yourself visibly and openly for the entire Western Cape to see. And I can also emphasize that this provincial government, be it provincially owned land or municipal owned land, and I answered you 4 weeks ago regarding this matter, we have not only released over 300 hectares of land across the province for human settlements development, they are also at different stages of development. So once again, we take action. We don't just talk and talk cheap to sound good for certain people in this Western Cape. Honourable Lily, I agree with you. We can overcome the emotive issue of land and housing if we do two simple things. As members of the House, we have oversight. That's why there is standing committees. And standing committees empower our members with the specific knowledge they need to actually empower our community. So I will advise you, Deputy Speaker, through you, that members who serve on specific standing committees must actually attend the meetings, and must actually attend the oversight visits. Then they can really start participating in the debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Simmons. We now move over to Interpolation 2. I recognise the Honourable Minister Bradell.
Chair, we don't hear the Honourable Bradell.
Okay, must I start out?
No, please continue.
These efforts have been greatly supported by the systems, processes and procedures that my department have developed and successfully implemented over time. Notwithstanding the initiatives introduced by my department, there is also legislation.
Honourable Minister, if you can just take your seat for a second. I recognise Honourable Smith with his hand up and then Honourable Kama. Honourable Smith, do you have a point of order?
Point of order, Deputy Speaker, yes. We could not hear the Minister's response from the beginning. It was totally silent when the Minister started to respond. So can the Minister please, may I please ask the Minister to restart his response, please?
Absolutely. Thank you for letting me know, Honourable Smith. I will ask the Minister to restart and the table staff to restart the timing. Please start again, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you to Honourable Smith for the interpellation. In the Western Cape, under the leadership of the Executive, all provincial departments and municipalities alike have prioritised clean and accountable governance. At a local government level, clean governance is prioritised by the political and administrative leadership and have over the years entrenched these principles in the oversight practices, business processes and culture systems of their municipalities. These efforts have been greatly supported by the systems, processes and procedures that my department have developed and successfully implemented over time. Notwithstanding the initiatives introduced by the department, there is also legislative and regulations that enables me in my capacity as Minister of Local Government to perform my oversight, monitoring and evaluation role to ensure the prevention of nepotism and cronyism that might impact on clean and accountable local governments. The legislation that gives impetus to this responsibility is rooted in the Constitution and further strengthened by, amongst others, the Local Government Systems Act, Local Government Structures Act, and the Municipal Financial Management Act. The foundation of this oversight responsibility is embedded in the Municipal Systems Act, in terms of which I consider the appointment of all senior municipal officials, which include the municipal manager and managers appointed in terms of Section 57 of the Municipal Systems Act. Procedural fairness, transparency and compliance with the regulations are taken into consideration to ensure that the appointments is sound. This process provides the platform to prevent nepotism and other similar negative practices that at a senior management level. As far as other appointments are concerned, my department provides ongoing guidance and advice to the municipalities to ensure compliance to this effect. My department has also prioritized the development of a special initiative to directly strengthen the capacity of municipalities to directly and decisively deal with potential corrupt practices. This project was initiated in conjunction with National COCTA, SALGA, National and Provincial Treasury, and other relative stakeholders to support the municipalities within the Western Cape province with the development and implementation of the anti-corruption strategy and fraud prevention plans. These plans and strategies, amongst others, incorporates the prevention of corrupt practices, including cronyism and nepotism. My department also provides special training to councils and municipal administrators about the implementation of these policies. In addition, my department continues to provide council training focusing on ethics and personal value systems. This training was well received, with requests to similar training initiatives focusing on ethics and value systems. Councillors have responded in that the training left them empowered with a better understanding of their roles and responsibilities. Lastly, Honourable Deputy Speaker, where I become aware of allegations of fraud, corruption and maladministration and have reason to believe that maladministration, fraud or corruption or any other serious malpractices has occurred or is occurring in that municipality, I may, when considered necessary, designate special investigators to undertake a formal investigation. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I now recognise Honourable Smith.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker. Let's just get my stuff here. Cronyism is generally accepted to mean the appointment of friends and associates to positions of authority. In most times, this happens without proper regard to their qualifications. While nepotism involves favoritism and relatives or friends of those in power, especially by giving them job opportunities. Another related term is favoritism, which is sometimes demonstrated in hiring, honoring, or awarding contracts to those who may have helped elect the person who has the power of appointment. Corruption, cronyism, nepotism, and favoritism are deeply entrenched in Western Cape government and municipalities. There are endless examples of practice in the Western Cape. For instance, the Mr. Craig Kesson and the husband of the DA's chief whip, Honorable Meryl Wenger, in the Executive Director for Corporate Services in the City of Cape Town. The 350 million rand old mutual investment by the George municipality is another example. The son of the DA councillor Stack Cronje receives huge sums of money from this investment. The DA played an active role in protecting Stack and former Chief Financial Officer Keith Jordan from accountability. While the provincial government claims to take strong action against any allegations of corruption and acting on wrongdoing without fear of favor, there is nothing to show for it, as it hasn't taken any action against those implicated in George municipality. Tim Harris, the DA Golden Boy, a former MP, is heading Westgrove and was recently awarded with a salary increase of close to R1 million. There are some of the examples that prove that corruption, nepotism, and favoritism entrenched in the Western Cape, and that those in power are promoting it. The MEC must tell us what measures is he going to take to investigate all allegations of nepotism, both in provincial government departments and entities, as well as in municipalities. All the measures that his government prides itself on have proved to be ineffective to prevent cronyism. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I'm done with my input.
Deputy Speaker, we can't hear you.
Can I take over?
Not you.
And me?
No.
Definitely not.
Honourable members, I think you can hear me through the streaming. I'm going to keep this on for now until we fix up the system. Honourable Smith, we did not actually hear half your speech. Can I just have order in the House, please? Thank you. We did not hear the last part of your speech, unfortunately, and I have no idea on which part we now have heard and not heard. I think I'm going to make a ruling, Honourable Smith, that you can read the last paragraph of your speech back on record, please.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the 350 million own mutual investment by the George municipality is another example. The son of DA Councillor Stack Cronje made and they received huge sums of money from this investment. The DA played an active role in protecting Stack and former Chief Financial Officer Keith Jordan from accountability. While the provincial government claims to take strong action against any allegations of corruption and acting on wrongdoing without fear or favor, there is nothing to show for it as it has taken any action against those implicating in George municipality. Lastly, Speaker, Tim Harris, the golden DA boy, a former MP, is heading Westgrow and was recently awarded with a salary increase of close to R1 million. These are some of the examples that prove that corruption, nepotism and favoritism entrenched in the Western Cape, that those in power are promoting it. The MEC must tell us what measures is he going to take to investigate all allegations of nepotism.
If you can just wait, there's a point of order. Honourable
Deputy
Wenger.
Speaker, I also have my hand up.
Yes, you did. Honourable Mitchell, what's your point of order?
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I want you to please rule because Honourable Smith's submission or input is factually incorrect. So he's deliberately misleading Parliament. I want you to please revert to the House with regards to his input, because as honourable members, we cannot deliberately mislead Parliament.
Honourable, I hear you. What is, Honourable Wenger, your hand is up. What is your point?
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The Member Smith is misleading the House and it is completely unacceptable. He's being untruthful and economical with the truth.
One for debate.
It is not a point for debate, it's a matter of fact.
Thank you very much. Honourable Heron, I see your hand is up.
Yes, Deputy Speaker. I mean, there were 2 points of order from the Chief Whip and the Deputy Chief Whip, but they didn't indicate which rules they were raising these points of order in terms of.
Honourable Wenger, I still see your hand is up. Would you like to speak? Okay. Honourable members, I'll tell you what the problem is. The sound was extremely bad during this time. What I would like to do is revert to Hansard on exactly what has happened during this time that Honourable Smith was speaking. And I would be mindful, Honourable Smith, if that is the case, there will be a ruling next week. So if I can revert back to Hansard on exactly the point of order made and revert next week. But Honourable Smith, if you're going to continue now while I can hear, I will make a ruling. So I will advise that you are careful with your wording as you finish off your speech.
Sorry, Deputy Speaker.
Just 1 minute, Honourable Smith. Honourable Heron, what's your point of order?
Can we please, you are taking a point of order from the Chief Whip and the Deputy Chief Whip without them identifying which rules they're alleging have been broken. So can we please have that clarity before you undertake to make a ruling next week when we don't know which rules have been allegedly broken?
Honourable Mitchell, would you like to respond on a ruling?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, when we took our oath of office, we acknowledged that we will adhere to the various rules and constitutions, and that we will be honourable in our execution of our duties. There's precedent being set previously that deliberately misleading the House, if Honourable Heron would refer back to previous rulings of this august House, he would note that deliberately misleading Parliament is unparliamentary. Thank you.
Deputy Speaker.
Honourable members, can I respond? I recognise Honourable Heron's hand up again. I recognise Honourable Lacker. Honourable Heron.
May I respond, Deputy Speaker? In terms
no, give me a second, please. I see Honourable Heron, then Honourable Lacker, and then Honourable Karma. Honourable Heron.
Deputy
hand is
Speaker,
still up, or?
yes, it is still up because the Deputy Chief Whip did not help Parliament or you. He's saying that there is a rule, according to our oath, that we wouldn't mislead Parliament. But you have to first find through a process that the Parliament has been misled. So we can't just take the Deputy Chief Whip's assertion that the Parliament has been misled. You would have to have a hearing with evidence before you can find that the Parliament has been misled. A point of order is raised when the rules have been broken, the standing rules of this House. So can the Deputy Chief Whip inform you and us which rule of the House has been broken?
Thank you, Honourable Heron. I recognise Honourable Lecker.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Good afternoon, everybody. In actual fact, Member Brett Heron has covered me in full. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And okay, Honourable Khamis has put the hand down. Honourable Chief Whip, you wanted to say something? Not sure if your hand is still up or if it's Honourable Deputy Chief Whip. Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, if you refer to the Code of Conduct that all of us as members of this Parliament sign and adhere to, under subsection 3, under integrity, a member, and I quote, a member shall ensure at all times that the dignity, credibility, and integrity of the provincial parliament is maintained.
Thank you. Honourable Lecker, is your hand still up? Honourable members, can we move on from this? Honourable Lecker. Honourable members, I'm going to stand by what I've just said. Honourable Lecker, did you want to say something?
No, actually, I'm trying to lower my hand because I had my turn.
Okay, no problem. What I'd still like to revert to is whether a previous ruling has been made in this House, and if so, I will revert back in the next sitting. And that is the point, that if there has been a previous ruling made, we remain consistent with the previous rulings, and they set precedents for this sitting going forward. Thank you very much. I would like to move on. I now recognize Honourable, before we continue, Honourable Smith, did you finish your speech?
I did not finish my speech, Deputy Speaker.
Okay, I would like you to please now finish the last sentence. Thank you very much.
Deputy Speaker, I am not comfortable by being abused in my speech. Let me finish with my last sentence. The MEC must tell us... I mean
your last sentence, Honourable Smith, please, that last paragraph that you were busy with.
Yes. The MEC must tell us what measures is he going to take to investigate all allegations of nepotism, both in the provincial department and entities as well as municipalities. All the measures that his government prides itself of have proved to be ineffective to prevent nepotism. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Smith. Honourable Mitchell, can I ask you to lower your hand? Okay, thank you very much. We're now moving on to Honourable America.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, Anthony Malata is tydelik aangestel as Local Economic Development and Tourism Officer teen 'n maandelikse salaris van R32.000. Voertuigtoelaag van R8.000, maar maak gereeld gebruik van die munisipaliteit se voertuig en 'n selfoontoelaag van R700 per maand. Hy het geen naskoolse opleiding nie. Hy vervul nie die rol as Local Economic Development Officer nie. Hy werk as politieke adviseur in die burgemeester se kantoor. Geen advertensies was geplaas nie, geen onderhoude gevoer nie. Johan Miller, vorige burgemeester en raadslid, tydelik aangestel as sportkoördineerder teen 'n salaris van R28.000, geen proses rakende aanstelling gevolg nie. Charmaine September, vorige burgemeester en raadslid aangestel as tydelike komitee klerk teen 'n salaris van R18,000, nog geen notules geneem nie, werk in die burgemeester se kantoor in Citrusdal. Andre Dirkse, aangestel as verkeersbeampte in Klein Willem, voorheen by Matsikama munisipaliteit, was in hegtenis geneem vir bedrog in Vredendal. Erik Koteng, tydelik aangestel as bestuurder tesourier, geen aanstellingsproses was gevolg nie, het geen ondervinding van plaaslike regering nie, is van Kimberley in die Noord-Kaap. Deputy Speaker, these are all appointments in the Cedarburg municipality, all ANC cadres. If that is not nepotism and cronyism, then I don't know what. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I recognise Honourable Heron.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the use of municipal jobs as a tool for intimidation or reward for party political support must be the cruelest form of politics. It's a form of cronyism that is rife in municipalities in this province, and there's no real political will to stop it because it's also used by DA governments. Municipal employment and EPWP opportunities are being used to intimidate or coerce people to support the DA in Saldanha, where the DA must defend a ward in a by-election in November. The DA speaker and the DA candidate, ward candidate, have threatened EPWP workers that they will lose their jobs or their opportunities for choosing to support good. The DA speaker has even threatened a permanent employee of the Saldanha municipality. That employee signed an affidavit which says, "I was also active within the DA structure in Vredenburg, Ward 13, and served on the branch executive. 2 months ago, I decided to resign from the DA and carry my freedom of association and became a member of the Good Party. Since I made this decision, my work has been threatened by the DA speaker of the Saldanha Bay municipality. I further state under oath that my work has been threatened because I joined the Good Party. It was clear that the speaker was unhappy about my decision. It was also clear she was prepared to use my employment as a weapon against me. The DA candidate, who's not an employee of the municipality, nor is he a councillor, has colluded with the speaker to threaten the EPWP opportunities of those who've decided to leave the DA. The affidavit goes on. The following person that called me in was the DA candidate for Ward 13 in Vredenburg, Mr. Schafers. In this meeting, he informed me that he had met with the speaker and a decision was taken that all good members in the municipality, whether on EPWP projects or permanently employed, are now at risk. Deputy Speaker, what kind of leaders threaten the most vulnerable people with the loss of their precarious short-term employment opportunity for choosing to exercise their democratic political rights? They certainly do not belong in office. We've laid criminal charges against the DA
Thank
speaker,
you, Honourable
but
Member.
I'm really happy to hear the Minister's commitment to acting, and I'm asking him to intervene and protect the poor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Heron. I recognise Honourable Smith.
Madam Speaker, point of order.
1 minute, Honourable Smith. What's your point of order, Honourable Member Murray?
Are we going to debate a candidate's behavior who's not a member of this House against a member of the public? What role is the minister going to do with that? Are we going to debate
Thank you,
that?
Honourable Murray. That's not a point of order. It's a matter of interpretation of what is the debate point here. I can't actually rule on that. Thank you very much. I recognise Honourable Smith.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The son of MEC Meyer has been appointed as an assistant director in the Department of Local Government and Environmental Affairs. MEC Ivan Meyer, as one of the senior cabinet members and a member of the DA's FedEx, enjoys close relations with the MEC Bredell as they have served together in the provincial government and in the DA structures for many years. There are reasonable grounds to believe that there was some form of influence in the appointment of his son in MEC Bredell's office or department. The Premier is on record defending this appointment when he said there is no law that indicates that family members of politicians may not be employed in the province, provided that they have undergone all the requisite processes. If anyone has any evidence that anything untoward occurred in the appointment of this official, I urge them to take me to make this available, and we will investigate. The official was appointed to the post after having undergone all the requisite processes. Given this stance by the Premier, we invite him to tell this House if there are any other children or relatives of MECs, MPLs, and or prominent politicians in the DA that are employed in the Western Cape government municipalities or government entities. Deputy Speaker, with a continued decline of trust in our government, the response by the Premier to concerns of nepotism in his government is highly unacceptable and should be condemned with strongest contempt. The need to fight against nepotism and cronyism in the Western Cape, especially given the examples cited above, has never been so important. Clearly, the mechanism to prevent nepotism are ineffective, and the ANC calls on the provincial government to identify potential occurrences of nepotism and favoritism in the Western Cape and tighten its measures to prevent all forms of nepotism. The process should start with an investigation into the appointment of Mr. Ivan Meyer Jr. into an assistant director post in the Department of Local Government. We look forward to the reply to our questions regarding the qualifications, expertise, and experience of other shortlisted candidates for the post. Deputy Speaker, lastly, the DA must come clean, as there is ample examples in municipalities like Oudtshoorn and others where former councillors has been appointed to senior management positions, even implicated in investigations against those councillors. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Smith. I now call on Honourable Minister Bredell.
Yeah, it's actually a disgrace. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. But let me...
One minute, Minister Bredell. 1 minute. Honourable Mitchell, what's your point of order?
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I refer you to Rule 59, 1, subsection B, on the reflection of the integrity or dignity of another member. The Honourable Smith has done so, and I ask you to please rule and revert to Hansard and come back to the House with his reflection on the integrity and or the dignity of Minister Meyer. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Mitchell. I certainly will consider both as one ruling when I revert next week.
A lot of points of orders today.
Over to you, Honourable Minister.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, thank you very much. Thank you to the Honourable America. I think if he's gone on with the list, he could have kept us busy for the whole day, because the ANC is the masters of corruption, nepotism, etc. To the Honourable Aaron, I hear what you're saying, and personally, and I can show you also to the DA manifesto, I think it's on page 13 on top, stands that the DA public representatives will not be involved in the award of EPWP appointments. So that's also according against our own manifesto. So if you've got any complaints, you can give it to me. We will investigate. But I can also tell you that there's also a complaint in Matsikama, where the ANC run Matsikama now refused to give a person the EPWP position because the person, and she said it on record, and there's a WhatsApp to contest to that now that she's a good member, the ANC won't give her EPWP post. I think misusing and using positions to even political scores is always wrong. Doesn't matter from which angle you look at that. But I think, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and I must think hard about this, because it's a complete disgrace to bring in my colleague, and I will add, Honourable Smith, my friend, Dr. Ivan Meyer, into this conversation. I've picked up that Dr. Ivan Meyer's son worked in my department when the ANC brought it to my attention, because we're not involved in appointments. It doesn't mean our children can't have an opportunity when they apply through the right process, and that's what the Premier explained to them. Why don't they look into how many ANC's families have we appointed in this, because they were the best candidates? And I really didn't want to do this. But the Honourable Smith must stand up, because his wife is a CW worker. Now, what now? I've never said anything, because she's gone, hopefully, through the process. But our family, if they go through a legal process, are entitled to work, the individuals. We cannot ban them from working. And I think it's a disgrace to bring in Honorable Mayor's son into this. He's a young person with a lot of talent, and why can't we build his capacity, irrespective of his father's political affiliation? I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. That brings us to the end of interpellations. Order. We'll now deal with questions as printed on the question paper. And just to remind all the honourable members that there are 4 opportunities for follow-up, and the person who posed the question will get the first opportunity for a follow-up question, and that's the way the process will work. So we now begin with question 1. I recognise the Premier.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and thank you very much to the Honourable Member for the question. As at 4 September 2020, the 13 provincial departments have reported a total of 6,273 Western Cape government employees that have contracted COVID-19 over the period that it has been here in the province. Departments reported that out of this, a total of 352 are active cases at present. Please note that the reporting and timing lags shift these numbers, and they can change from time to time. Then B1, as reported by the department as at 4 September 2020, there have been a total of 5,831 recoveries amongst the Western Cape government employees who have contracted COVID-19. Again, please note that these numbers can vary. And then item 3, mortality rate of those affected. As at 4 September 2020, the departments have reported that there have been a total of 90 fatalities amongst Western Cape employees, and I would also like to use this opportunity to send my condolences to each of their families. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Premier. I recognise Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, before I ask my follow-up question, if you can just pay attention to the hands, because I know earlier on Member Mitchell's hands was up and you unfortunately didn't notice it. So for the other follow-up questions, if somebody in the desk can just pay attention. But my follow-up question, Deputy Speaker, is I just want to find out from the Premier, and also condolences to all of those involved. It's a very difficult period for all of us and for the families, particularly those with bereavement. I want to find out from the Premier what type of psychosocial services are provided to the family or to the staff members working in government after they obviously return to work, or if they are at home, and is there a hotline, with, for example, where people can contact? Thank you.
Thank you, Premier.
Thank you very much. Within government, and I've experienced myself when I also contracted the virus, is out of the HR department, a phone call is made to every individual who when we pick it up that they are COVID positive, and then we get asked, are you okay? Do you need any further support? Obviously, if they need professional support, then that will get referred to the Department of Social Development. But yes, the answer is yes. So there is that support coming from our system with those follow-up calls.
Thank you, Premier. I recognise Honourable Dugmore.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Premier, for your response, and from the side of the ANC, sincere condolences to those of our provincial government officials who have passed on during this time. I would like to ask, in regard to the question concerning the mortality rate, if the Premier has any figures or any sense of how many of those who have passed on, excuse me, have in fact had comorbidities, and does the Premier have information around the age category of those who have passed on? Has it been consistent with the provincial and national trends in regard to age? And then the other question about the number of those who have passed on who've had comorbidities. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Premier.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the Honourable Dugmore. I actually have the report here, but we don't report down to that level. So, I mean, my automatic response would be probably very similar to the provincial wide. But of course, if the honourable member does want the detail, we'd have to obviously go and get that exact detail for him.
Thank you, Premier. Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, my third question with the Premier would be, is it safe to say that those who are recovered are back at work and are continuing to providing services to the people of the Western Cape?
Premier.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, Honourable Member, for the question. I want to say yes. I think as last week, there was 83% of the staff of this province, the workforce, 84,113 members of our workforce. 83% were back at work last week. And I don't have the report for this week, but I would estimate now that from a school's point of view, it would now go back to 86%. And obviously, it varies slightly here and there. And as I said, obviously these reports, you could have a slight number here and there, but it'll probably be around about 86%. But of course, this morning I attended a meeting with all of the employees of the Department of the Premier. So we had a meeting with over 700 members of staff. And obviously, you can either come into the office or you can log on. And I think today, trying to meet in one venue, it would be impossible to bring everyone together right now in one venue. But it is quite amazing that you can pull everybody into a meeting. And in that discussion, we are now talking about what that new normal is to us. And I think every single department are looking at that. So at the moment, we know that about 10.3% of the workforce in our government are operating from home. I presume that should drop slightly over the next couple of weeks. But we also need to have a look at how we can increase that number to whatever we find as our new normal. We need to make sure that we utilize this crisis to the benefit of traffic, to the benefit of working hours, of the working environment. And it is, I think, that co-designed space that is going to change over the next couple of weeks and months till we find what that new norm is. And as they say, never waste a good crisis. And I don't think that we are wasting it from an HR or a working place point of view. And I think it's going to be quite exciting the next few months of how we develop that new way of working as a government.
Thank you, Premier. Honourable Dugmore, I think your hand is up again.
No, it's not, Deputy Speaker. Sorry, I should have removed my hand. I don't have a follow-up. Thank you.
No problem. Are there any other follow-ups? There's one more bite for the cherry. No. Thank you. We will move over to question 4, which is stood over from Thursday last week. I recognise the Honourable Minister Mayor.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you to Honourable Member Mackenzie for this question. The Department of Agriculture developed the Food Security Program in order to focus inter alia on urban agriculture, and the development of the Food Security Program was informed by the Policy on Food and Nutrition Security, which was developed around about 2013. And Mitchell's Plain forms a part of the COVID-19 hotspot areas and is therefore a key focus area of the Department of Agriculture. And since this year, or June in particular, 99 households, food gardens were implemented, and demonstrations as well as extension and advisory services is part of the food garden rollout process in this province. It must also be noted that the City of Cape Town has its own urban agriculture policy, which was also approved by the Council on the 7th of December 2006. And I've also recently made some contact with the Urban Agricultural Unit of the City of Cape Town, and we are certainly looking forward in terms of rolling out this project within the 26 sub-councils within the City of Cape Town. And members who are interested to start a home garden can approach the department to complete the necessary household profile forms. People on the indigent list of municipalities, those who are jobless, women, the youth, and those earning less than 4,500 rand will be prioritized as part of this initiative. Demonstrations, training, and extension and advisory services will also form part of this process. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable Minister, I recognise Honourable Mackenzie and then Honourable Dugmore.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Honourable Minister, for the answer. Honourable Minister, I just wanted to find out, how is this strategy communicated to the people? And I must say, thank you very much for your department in Casidra for the project that you've launched in Mitchell's Plain recently. And then secondly, is the department providing mentorship roles for these gardens? It's obviously nice that they are implemented, but is there follow-up to ensure these gardens become sustainable? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and to the Honourable Member for the follow-up question, because that is certainly what is very important in the architects of any development is two things. One, sustainability, and secondly, I think he raises a very important issue relating to mentorship. What we are currently doing, Honourable Deputy Speaker, we know that particularly the area of Mitchell's Plain is also part of the hotspot, and so my department is also working closely with the sub-council in Mitchell's Plain. We will now work more closely with the various sub-councils within the various, particularly in the city of Cape Town. And furthermore, our officials has also established project networks in the community, project WhatsApps, and we also work on the indigenous list of the various municipalities. And in these communities, there are also extensive networks that are involved in community development, and we also liaise not only with them, but also with the faith-based leaders and with schools. Education department is also very much part of that. So we also have information and information days, particularly for farmers. Very unfortunate this year that we have those information days more on a virtual, on a digital platform. Honourable Deputy Speaker, in this week, I have opened a information day on a digital in Outeniqua, but in future there will certainly be much more such opportunities where we can have face-to-face contact with these colleagues. But we roll it out largely through the networks of the municipalities, through the networks of NGOs, civil organizations, and certainly also through the various information WhatsApp groups that we have established. Honourable Deputy Speaker, there is also a question as it relates to, are there any further support in the context of mentorship? Yes, there are also follow-up strategies, because one of the very important things of vegetable or community gardens is that you are regularly receiving visits from our agricultural and advisory services. Our extension officers on a regular basis visit these colleagues and people who started a vegetable garden. In addition, once they are looking after their vegetable gardens, particularly what we call the starter pack, we are certainly looking up to a more intermediate intervention. Our advisory services, they are also acting as the necessary support and as mentors to these colleagues. We are seeing a dramatic change in the appetite for this, and certainly we're looking forward to continue with this. So are there mentors for these colleagues? Absolutely, yes. In bigger scale projects, we also bring on farmers, both small scale farmers and commercial farmers, to partner with us to wanting to make this a very big success. We have seen it this week, rolling out in George, rolling it out also 2 days ago in Mossel Bay and in George, as well as in Albertina. So the answer is yes, in terms of the mentorship program, and we certainly use the extensive network of organizations, also starting with municipalities, because particularly what we want to effect is a transition from food relief to food security. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I recognise Honourable Dugmore.
Thank you very much to the MEC for his reply, and for Member Mackenzie for the question. In terms of putting a follow-up question, I noted that the MEC answered particularly on the issue of the focus on home gardens, starter packs for home gardens. I think the key issue is to what extent the municipality of Cape Town and other municipalities are actually providing land available for farmers to actually lease. So I would like to ask him in the Mitchells Plain area, which the question refers to, and in the city of Cape Town, is the Minister and his department aware of any municipal land that is actually leased out to small and emerging farmers, besides now the issue of giving support, which we also do support, to home gardens? The issue is municipal land leased out to small-scale farmers within the city of Cape Town and Mitchells Plain in particular. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. This is certainly a new question, and I'm happy to come back to establish the facts. I know that some municipalities, Honourable Member Duckmore, that they have normally a policy on leasing on agricultural land, as I have explained earlier in this year or last year, that there are some municipalities that have adopted a formal policy through the council on the leasing of agricultural land. But your question is specific. Am I aware of land being leased to small farmers in Mitchells Plain area by the city of Cape Town? I would certainly like to come back and have the real facts before I answer that question.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Moran.
Thanks very much, Deputy Speaker. MEC, given the impact of the coronavirus pandemic, which has threatened to exacerbate poverty and has exposed the imbalances between the haves and the have-nots, we have seen many people, and most of them black, going without food on a daily basis. Now, you know, for instance, the agriculture sector has been declared essential services during this pandemic. But what we have seen, MEC, is that it has also come where the prices of food has been inflated by shops. It's made it impossible for farm workers to afford the very food that they are produced, to afford it. What is your department doing, MEC, to contain the food price inflation and to make sure that food security is there for all, including farm workers? Thanks.
Thanks, Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member Maran. I think there are a number of issues. One is the issue of demand and supply. We know from economics that when there is a shortage of certain products, the prices normally escalate, but I don't think that's what you're talking about. I think when you speak about the food inflation, this is certainly a reality of the day, that we have seen some food inflation. Secondly, I think also very importantly, if we have any evidence of any unfair competitive business practices, I think we have an institutional architecture in South Africa, and that is the Competition Commission. And I would be very happy if Honourable Member Maran and I can have a cup of tea, because that's the way I solve problems and make an impact, so that we can certainly look into some uncompetitive business practices that can harm both the economy in the Western Cape, but also the demand and supply chain, particularly as it relates to the farm workers. So I would be very happy if there are evidence to this effect that we engage with the Competition Commission in this regard. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, giving me the last opportunity on this. Honourable Minister, the food security is obviously dependent on highly skilled individuals. And the highly skilled individuals come from good established agricultural colleges that are properly managed by good government. Given the fact that food security is currently a serious matter in the country, and given in the province, and given the question on the agricultural strategy for the province, would you be concerned or worried if individuals that is strategically not manage this would take it over?
Thank you, Minister.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I'd like to firstly understand the question properly. Is the question, am I concerned if agricultural colleges are taken over as it is an FET by the national government? Is that the question?
Yes.
Honourable Mackenzie, can you just, okay, yes, he says.
Okay, Honourable Deputy Speaker, we here in the Western Cape really value education and training and development. One of my first strategic priorities as I came to office, and honourable members of the Standing Committee on Agriculture will know that the first meeting I had with them, I outlined my strategic vision for agriculture for this province. And I've developed what is known as 5 key priorities. The number one strategic priority is structured training, education, and training. And for us, agriculture is a science, and the science needs to be backed up by research. So research for us is significant, is very important. But also the issue of agricultural training is fundamentally important, given that we need to transform the agricultural sector through the investment that we want to make here in education and training. And so we know that the Elsenburg Agricultural Training College is one of the oldest agricultural training institutions on the African continent. And so we certainly are concerned about the latest developments by the national government in wanting to take all the agricultural colleges away from the various provinces and take it to the national government department. Now, I have to inform, it is my duty, it is my responsibility to inform this House as the Western Cape Provincial Legislature that this is a major risk. If this function is taken over by the national government, we can expect a radical decline in the capacity of agricultural training in the Western Cape. Given the fact that the Western Cape is responsible for 45% of agricultural exports in South Africa, this is a real risk, not a perceived risk. And the question is, am I concerned? Honourable Deputy Speaker, I am deeply concerned. I'm worried. I'm nervous. I'm stressed about the potential of the national government department to take over this college. This will be a huge mistake. And I will certainly engage with my cabinet colleagues about what we think is the most appropriate strategy to protect our agricultural, educational, investment, institutional architecture. And I have already engaged with one of the members of my cabinet in this particular regard. And certainly, once I have a mandate from the Western Cape Cabinet, I'm happy to come back to this House to inform this House of what our future plans are. We have seen what has happened with the nursing training colleges. We have seen what has happened with the educational colleges, and I'm deeply worried that if we go on this route, we are going to destroy the educational Agricultural Training Institute. And this Agricultural Training Institute, Honourable Deputy Speaker, as you know, as my predecessor in this position, you know that we're not only training people from the Western Cape, but from all over South Africa, because in the rest of the country, many of those institutions have already collapsed. So this is the last institution that we need to protect for the benefit of agriculture in South Africa. I'm happy to come back to this House, Honourable Deputy Speaker, to give Honourable Member Mackenzie a detailed reply once I receive a mandate by the Western Cape Premier and the Western Cape Cabinet. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. We now move over to question 7. I recognise Honourable Minister Mayo.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, thank you for this question from Honourable Member van der Westhuizen. The 25 million rand drought support from the National Disaster Management Centre via the work of my colleague, Minister Bradell from the Provincial Disaster Management Centre was transferred on the 7th of July 2020. The first fodder vouchers were issued on the 1st of August 2020, in other words, last month, to farmers in extremely critical areas, particularly as it relates to the Central Karoo, the West Coast, the Cape Winelands, Garden Route, and even the Overberg districts. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the outlook is bleak for additional drought relief budget support in the form of fodder support. The department did apply to the National Disaster Management Centre via the Provincial Disaster Management Centre in December 2019 for an allocation of 178 million rand. To date, we have only received 25 million rand to this effect. Honourable Deputy Speaker and Honourable Member van der Westhuizen, all farmers in drought-affected areas classified according to the department's felt assessment as critical and extremely critical, qualify to apply for drought relief. And farmers applying for drought relief must submit all the required documentation as outlined in the department's standard operating procedures. In order to be eligible for the support from the department, furthermore, only farmers adhering to the carrying capacity of the farm will qualify for this support. And so this is important, Honorable Deputy Speaker, that we look into the capacity of the veld in order to continue. One of the things that we sometimes see is after the assessment of the veld, we determine the carrying capacity of the livestock. And if people have more than the normal qualifying number of livestock, certainly they will not qualify because they're not complying with the criteria. Also, Honorable Deputy Speaker, all applications are evaluated against the criteria as listed by the Department's Standard Operating Procedure to further support to ensure applicants adhere to the listed requirements. Once applicants qualify for drought relief, the National Disaster Management Framework guides the Western Cape Department of Agriculture as to the rand value farmers qualify that is based on the number of animals. Lastly, Honorable Deputy Speaker, in the Department's Standard Operating Procedure for further support, the process clearly outlined a process for applications. In the outlined process, there's a definite separation of functions between the district and the head office. The applications are received by the district office, which assess the applications for completeness, and then they recommend it to the Disaster Risk Management Sub-Program based at our head office. Now, this standard operating procedure, Honorable Deputy Speaker, is followed to ensure independent decision-making at the various levels. And what we also do, Honorable Deputy Speaker, we give vouchers, not cash, are issued to farmers and are redeemed at the participating suppliers. These vouchers contain all the farmer's details and the amount the farmer qualifies for, and vouchers can only be used to redeem fodder as stipulated on the voucher and cannot be used to purchase other goods and services. After the farmers have received their vouchers, a detailed invoice is submitted for payment. And lastly, Honorable Deputy Speaker, invoices are then matched to the vouchers to ensure no unauthorized purchases were made before payment is processed. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize Honorable van der Westhuizen.
Geachte adjunct Speaker, baie dankie aan die minister vir 'n deeglike en uitgebreide antwoord wat baie gerusstellend is, veral nadat ons onlangs in die media verneem het van die grootskaalse korrupsie in die Oos-Kaap met droogtehulp. Maar minister, volgens berigte is die weiveld in die Karoo en in sekere dele van die Matsikama distrik so vernietig dat selfs as ons nou bo-gemiddelde reën sou ontvang, dat dit daardie veld nog 3 jaar sal neem om weer te kan herstel tot sy normale toestand. En my vraag is daarom net, kan ons op kort termyn en van jaar tot jaar wag en verneem of daar droogtehulp gaan wees? Of is daar dalk enige kans dat u 'n beroep kan doen op die sentrale regering om nou alreeds voorsiening te maak vir droogtehulp vir die volgende 3 jaar? Want ons weet, dit is wat die minimum hulp gaan wees wat benodig gaan word vir daardie dele. Baie dankie.
Dankie, agbare lid. Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. This is a matter that is also equally of great concern to me because I have been informed by my colleague, the Minister of Local Government, because as you know, he's responsible for provincial disaster management in this province, and he worked very closely with the National Disaster Management Center. And I have been informed by Minister Bradell that there are now serious discussions in the National Department of COGTA that they want to rethink and undo the work that has been done over a number of years by having a category of drought support to continue into the future. South Africa is the 30th driest country in the world. And therefore, we certainly need to think, even now, despite this good rain and many of our dams, Honorable Deputy Speaker, as we sit here, are 98% full. But despite this, there are still areas in terms of the Phelps assessment, the scientific assessment of the Phelps, that certainly will continue to need support. And so there are two things. One of the issues is we need to seriously think and liaise with the farmers in terms of the climatic conditions of those particular areas. But I think it will be a huge mistake to remove drought relief from the funding architecture to support provinces. We know that the drought is severe in the Eastern Cape, the Northern Cape, the Western Cape, and the Free State. And I think it will be unwise to no longer have a category of drought relief support. And that is some of the discussions with Minister Bradell. He is currently leading those discussions within the National MINMEC, and we are looking forward for an outcome in this particular regard. I think from climatic conditions, we have prepared our farmers in this particular regard. In addition, we have also established a drought portal to assist our farmers in this particular regard. I am deeply concerned that drought is a reality, climate change is a reality, and certainly we need to continue to support our farmers in drought-stricken areas, particularly as it relates to food security here in the Western Cape.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize Honourable Mackenzie.
No, Chairperson, I think that was earlier on. Sorry about that.
No problem. Honourable Moran.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. MEC, can you tell us how has the contribution assisted affected farmers in the province and whether the provincial government intends to top up the funding and continue supporting farmers over the MTF? The second question, MEC, let me also do that. The second question, and you have said that drought is a reality and climate change is real. Now we like to understand, MEC, to mitigate the impact of the drought. The climate change strategy introduced crops and animals who can actually handle heat and drought better. Here we are talking about the Nguni cattle and also the Damara sheep, as well as the Soutbos flowers. Can you tell us, MEC, what have your department done to popularize and promote these animals and crops? And if, have your department spent any money to promote this and how much was spent? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I think there are two questions. The first question that relates to the drought and the impact of drought and the funding and additional funding over the MTF. I would like to confirm, as Honourable Member know, that I did mention this during the Standing Committee on Agriculture, that we have received additional money through the Ministry of Finance. And I'm particularly happy that the Minister of Finance, my colleague, Minister David Mania, did invoke Section 25 of the Public Finance Management Act to make money available. I'm deeply thankful for that because that greatly assisted farmers over this particular period. But I'm also mindful that COVID-19 had a massive impact on education, on the health department, and on other related departments, and that the drought also had a massive impact. I'm also mindful that our colleague, the Minister of Finance, and the Premier had a discussion about the issue of additional money that we require in the tune of 5 billion rand from the national government. I'm also mindful that the Premier and the Minister of Finance is engaging with the Presidency at the moment about additional resources for the Western Cape. And so, over the MTF, this will be a massive challenge, and I would certainly not like to put the Cabinet under more pressure and stress as what they already have in terms of the current fiscal strategy and the fiscal envelope. But I'm happy to say that we have received additional 25 million rand, but I think it will become more and more. And I have to be realistic, farmers have to be realistic, that it will get over the next 3 to 5 years extremely difficult given the current financial situation in South Africa. The matter that is also of great concern to me, Honourable Deputy Speaker and Honourable Member Maran is fully aware of that, and that relates to the issue of drought support not being given specifically to fruit farmers. And fruit farmers, particularly in areas like Kanaland, those areas are deeply affected because the drought relief and drought support is largely for livestock farmers and for fodder. And certainly we have seen great losses in the fruit industry. And this is for us important because if we take fruit, for example, we are the second biggest fruit producer, South Africa, that is in the world, with the 9th biggest citrus fruit exporter per volume. And so certainly this is something that affects me greatly. Lastly, Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Member Maran asked about additional type of animals and stock. What he asked the sort of allocative efficiencies and the questions about the fiscal envelopes for certain livestock. I regard that as a new question, and I'm happy to come back to the House with a full detailed response to the latter part of his question. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I don't see any other hands around this question. We shall move on.
Speaker, my hand is up.
Honourable Moran, is your hand up again? Yes, you.
Yes, Deputy
Sorry,
Speaker.
Honourable, 1 minute, Honourable Moran. Honourable Murray's hand is up. I recognise you, Honourable Murray. My apologies.
Thank you so much, Speaker. I would like to ask the Minister if any attention for drought relief has also been considered for emerging farmers. I know that commercial farmers are looked after, but I want to know if it's also extended to emerging farmers who also suffer and need drought relief.
Honourable Minister, did you hear that? I know, wasn't sure if Honourable Murray's question was okay. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, Honourable Deputy Speaker, I did get the question from the Honourable Member Murray. Thank you very much for that question. Honourable Member Murray, I think small-scale farmers or emerging farmers, due to the cash flow problems, they are normally the hardest hit when it comes to drought and these particular climatic conditions. Absolutely, the answer is yes. They do qualify, they do apply, and they do receive for the support. I personally went to Bitterfontein to hand over vouchers, drought vouchers, support to emerging farmers in areas like Bitterfontein. So the answer is absolutely yes. They do qualify, and we will continue to support them.
Thank you very much. Honourable Moran, just please, Honourable Moran, you did ask 2 questions. It's only 1 question. I would have taken that as an extra, but you are now welcome to take the last cherry for questioning the Minister.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. Just on my previous question, and I'm not sure whether it is regarded as a new question because the Honourable van der Western Station have actually asked 4 questions, which also speak to what is the outlook for any future drought relief. And I think that particular question that I've asked fits in there. Deputy Speaker, I just want to check with the MEC, and you have explained basically the criteria, and you have also mentioned the standing operation procedures for further support. MEC, I just wanted to check with you. Earlier this year, we had an oversight visit to the small and greater Karoo, and that also includes the 2 farms managed by Casidra, and one of those farms are Amalienstein. And when we arrived at Amalienstein, there was a 24-tonner, a truck, standing with a fodder for that particular farm. And when Casidra was doing the presentation, and we have basically asked the question, is it part of the drought support? And they said yes. And it was basically an exchange where the farm gave water to the community in exchange for further support. Now, I've listened what you said in terms of the criteria for a farm to qualify. And we are grateful for the support in terms of water that was given by the farm. But whether that qualifies and whether it's part of the standing operation procedures, and if not, whether it's regarded as a deviation, and if whether any other farmer, for instance, can also exchange water for fodder. I just wanted to check in terms of that particular issue that have happened, MEC. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I'm not so absolutely sure about that, so I will have to come back. I would also very much like to ask the chairperson of the standing committee if there was any minutes and reports of that particular oversight visit, and I would also be very happy to receive a copy of that, but I'm happy to come back either to the House or to the standing committee in respect to the question of Honourable Member Maran. I don't have the answer now.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. That concludes question 7. We will now move over to new questions, and I now move over to question 2. I recognise Honourable Minister Schaefer.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and to Member Botha for the question. The trend in attendance has generally been positive since schools reopened in June, taking into account the phasing of grades. I have detailed figures for every grade from the beginning of their opening to until now. If the member would like, I can table them. But the general trend has been up, except in grade 9, which has actually gone down, which is concerning. But I'm particularly pleased about grade 7 and 12, which were the first ones to go back, and which originally showed quite a low attendance rate of 32.5% in grade 7 and 44.4% in grade 12, which are now gone up to 76.5% and 87.9% for our matrics. So I'm very pleased about that. Of course, also in understanding the figures, one also has to remember several things. Firstly, that the figures are for physical attendance at school, at least once during the week under consideration, that grades have returned on different dates according to the gazetted directions, but some schools did notify the department of a deviation to bring back additional grades earlier than scheduled. And there are also people who are legitimately staying home because their parents applied for a concession because of comorbidities or because they were anxious about COVID. Learners who display any of the symptoms have also been asked to stay at home. And of course, each school has their own temporary revised education plan, which means that people have different days when they are coming to school, different grades or classes. So it does also make it quite difficult to get accurate attendance figures. But in general, it has certainly been increasing. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I recognise Honourable Botha.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Thank you to the Minister. I want to know, Minister, if you could take us into your confidence of some of the possible reasons for the initial low attendance and later the improvement in attendance figures.
Minister?
Let me turn my screen on. Yes, thank you very much, Member Botha. I think generally, initially, there was a huge amount of anxiety because of the unknowns that we face with this virus. When some of the grades returned, we were still approaching the peak in infections, and people were worried about that. And now with the move to level 2 and talk of possible move to level 1 and the announcement that we have passed the peak, combined with the statistics we have been keeping of schools, and when we publicized those, I think that also reassured some people that we do not have evidence of the infections spreading in schools. I think that's made a difference. Then, of course, we also had some deliberate misinformation from some people. There were political parties, organizations, and activist groups, and some teachers, in fact, who were saying that schools were too dangerous to go to, despite scientific evidence showing the contrary. We had some people sending really horrific messages around communities with inaccurate information, which was spreading fear among people. So I think that really didn't help either. We had low morale and demotivated learners also. There's a lot of evidence from around the world that shows that long school closures during pandemics and natural disasters make it very difficult to keep learners engaged. They get out of the habit of going to school and learning, and it does worry me that we could see dropouts because of that. And it takes a huge effort from teachers, parents, and the department to try and encourage learners to come back to class. And then, yeah, we just also had the interrupted momentum. We just started getting back into the swing of things in July, and then suddenly the president said we were closing again, against the advice of the medical experts and the Ministerial Advisory Committee. And this certainly also disrupted the return of grades and demotivated some other learners and parents also. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I recognise Honourable Sayed.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thanks to the Minister for the response. Based on the Minister's response, as well as if I look at the response to a written question that I posed on the 28th of August, the response that you submitted, wherein the Minister indicated that districts experienced various challenges with regards to return of learners to schools, including low learner attendance at some schools, which are reflected herein as well. Late arrival of learners in some instances as a result of the taxis and buses being full. Also, we found that the protocol for managing confirmed cases of COVID were not, basically necessarily all being applied correctly. We found that principals were closing schools when they should not have done so. There were those examples that the Minister did basically cite. Can she indicate then what was the impact of these specific challenges? How many schools were affected? I don't need an exact number, but possibly, if the Minister can probably give us a broad figure, an approximate figure, and how are these being addressed and how were they being addressed? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I can't give you even broad figures on how many were affected at, over the time period. But yes, we certainly did initially have issues with people applying the protocols. Some didn't understand them well enough, despite the fact that we had sent out detailed circulars. I think there was, we need to acknowledge the levels of anxiety that existed amongst people, staff as well. And I think that all contributed to it. So what we did was we put in place procedures. My HOD was extremely good at making sure that we had, as soon as we did identify any problem that was addressed, that our officials went to the school or engaged with the school to try and ensure that they did understand what protocol had to be followed. And we made sure that the contractors were on standby in every district to make sure that if there was decontamination required, that they were able to do so. In fact, he was trying to do it, and I think did do it just about on a daily basis. His aim was to make sure that they were done on the same day so that the schools could open as soon as possible. So, obviously, they all have a huge impact on every school closure, and the prolonged period of closure has had a huge impact on all learners. I don't think we'll be able to quantify that. I don't know if ever, but international research has certainly shown that any prolonged school closure period has a huge impact on learners educationally, as well as their future earning potential, which is why I've been so concerned about schools being closed for such a long time.
Thank you, Minister. I recognise Honourable Botha.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Through you, Deputy Speaker, I'd like to ask the Minister, in regard to the low attendance of our learners in schools now, what would the impact be on our number of learner intake for the 2021 academic year?
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Botha. The figures aren't that low now. I said the grade 9 was a bit low, but as I say, it's also difficult to work out whether that is just because at a particular time they are, only half the class is there. But in general, our attendance is not that bad, and the people who aren't there, a lot of them are busy doing work from home because they've been given permission to stay home. Anyone who was given permission to stay home is required to do work from home, and their parents have had to undertake to get work from the school to do that and make sure that they keep up. It's not going to have an impact on the 2021 intake because if they've been given permission to stay home, they will remain on the school's register for next year. So from that point of view, it won't have an impact. And if you can see that from the number of complaints I'm getting from people who aren't able to find places for their children next year. But the one impact it may have is obviously on their progression into the next grade, depending on how they've managed to keep up with the work. And if more people maybe aren't able to progress to the following grade next year, then that will impact on the intake in those grades for 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognise Honourable Botha.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I'd like to request through you for the Minister to furnish us with the exact detail of the numbers of learners, low numbers of learners attendance at schools, please.
Thank you, Minister.
I will furnish the exact percentages from the data that the relevant grades opened and what they are now. I certainly will table that with the House. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now, question 3 and 4 stand over, and we now move over to question 5. I recognise the Honourable Minister Bradell. No problem.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. And thank you to the Honourable Member America for the question. The city procured legal services for several years through the process which has been found not to be compliant with all the requirements of supply chain management regulations. The city was therefore requested to disclose such legal service procured as irregular expenditure respectively for 5 financial years. In addition, due to the city's interpretation of the legislation with regards to the disclosure of irregular expenditure relating to amounts paid versus payable, the practice in the city was to disclose amounts paid as irregular expenditure and the amount payable as a deviation. It was found that both amounts should have been disclosed as irregular expenditure, and the city had to reclassify the amounts payable for deviation to irregular expenditure. This resulted in a decrease in the deviation and an increase in the irregular expenditure amount being disclosed. The B part to the Member America's question, corrective steps have already been taken and implemented by the city as set out in page 179 of the 2019-20 annual report. The corrective steps which the city had put in place has revealed additional non-compliant matters which the city had to disclose, and these matters are currently being dealt with by the Municipal Public Accounts Committee as per the stipulations of Section 32 of the MFMA in order for these breaches to be ratified. Where appropriate consequence management has been recommended and taken, it should be noted that the city continues to find proactive mechanisms to detect and self-report irregular expenditure. Most importantly, the city did not record any material irregular expenditure. This is typically irregular expenditure that must be recovered from politicians or staff when it is found that they deliberately caused the irregular expenditure. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable America.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Minister, could you share with the House that the way it is framed, the irregular expenditure, thank you for the explanation, is that it might create the misconception that the city did not get value for their money. Can you just elaborate on that, please?
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Member. No, and that's why I've ended off by there was no, there was value added to the city. It is more to adhere to the findings within the audit report. So we're not too worried. We keep a close eye on it. Obviously, it's a big machine, but the city is also busy with proactive mechanisms to detect any irregular expenditure. The sooner the better, and we will deal with that going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any follow-up questions relating to this question? No. Thank you. One minute, members. Honourable members, there's not much time to start a new question, so I'm going to end it there with the questions. Thank you very much. That is the end of questions for oral reply. Any outstanding replies will be printed in the Hansard. We now move to the questions to the Premier without notice in terms of Rule 204. I now recognise the Honourable Christians.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you. Premier, just a question. Is your government's 1.4 billion rand safety plan making communities safer or not? If yes, what is the relevant details? If not, what are the relevant details? Thank you.
Thank you. Premier.
Thank you very much to the Honourable Christians for that question. And sure, I mean, if so, what are the details? And if not, what are the details? Of course, you must understand that this is a whole of government plan and response. Every single department, as we've seen a number of the questions actually being put by other members to different departments. It is a very complex question to answer and would be probably perfect in a standing committee or in a written question. But I must say, yes, we have to start somewhere. I think a year ago when we came into government in this province, we had oversight and a Department of Community Safety, and we said we've got to do a lot more than just that. And so I think in the lead up to the start of COVID-19, I think this province actually did, and the departments, every department went above and beyond putting this plan together. Obviously, some reporting disruptions happened during the last 6 months, but at least the last 2 months, you've seen that the safety team coming together again, regularly reporting, regularly checking. Now, I think the overall goal is to halve the murder rate, because we all know that the murder rate in some of our communities is really, it is one of the worst rates in the world. And we can't just leave this to the criminal justice system or the South African police services. And although a province does not have that competency, only an oversight, that is why we started to really put this plan and the actions of this plan into being. And you would have seen the first 500 officers marching out into the Athlone Stadium. That was part of the law enforcement officers that we put together with the city of Cape Town. I must say that was a goosebump moment for me within a few months of coming into this term, seeing probably one of the biggest single HR exercises ever to take place in the city of Cape Town, getting those first officers on the ground. Obviously now during COVID, they also had their duties changed. We saw supporting the lockdown, etc. But glad to say that those focuses are back on those hotspots. Again, the departments, like the Department of Health on the first 1,000 days. I think specifically, I think of the Department of Social Development, and specifically Minister Fernandes and the work that she's been doing around gender-based violence, and really moving it from 16 days of activism to 365, really bringing it in to have full cabinet focuses, and not just the cabinet meeting, full cabinets and extended cabinets. So you have districts, mayors, municipal managers, the city of Cape Town involved in a cabinet session which is dedicated to gender-based violence, really trying to bring about major change. That is also a blight and a scourge on our society, where, as I say often, every one of us should hang our heads in shame. And we have to make a substantial dent and bring about change in this environment. And so I could probably speak for an hour on this, but I definitely want to say to you, yes, and I've given you some of those examples and focus areas, but there is every single department has got an area that they're focusing on. And of course, now that we're in the recovery stage, you will have noticed that we're expanding our focus into 3 areas in recovery, one of them continuing to be safety, the second one being one of dignity, because when you lose your job and you can't feed your family, you lose all dignity. And how do we create that safety net? And then, of course, all of these being brought together on how we get jobs now, the next 100 days, probably sitting at 90 now as a focus since we put that plan together. How do we make sure that we do immediate interventions from our side? But all of them are underpinned by whether we can slowly but surely build a safer society.
Premier, honourable questions.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, as I was driving in yesterday into Parliament, I heard over the radio, and this is why I'm asking the Premier that question, that I think he's aware of that 10-year-old boy that was struck in the head by a stray bullet. Nahimia Clausen, a 10-year-old grade 6 learner, 11 o'clock in the morning Monday, he was struck and is in hospital. And the various gang factions are still fighting for drug and turf, for turf and drugs. And also it's reported that the shooting is non-stop in Parkwood. That is one example where communities are saying that these activities, these gangster activities, has become the norm. And that's why my question, that is one of the incidents I heard the community is calling out for help in Parkwood. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Premier.
Thank you very much, and exactly, Honourable Christians. You know, when I decided probably a year and a half ago to put my hand up within my own political party and go through a process of applying to become the Premier candidate, you apply your mind to what would it be that you would like to see a difference? Where would you like to see a difference? What do you think would be the changes that need to come about should you be successful in attaining this position? And I have, I mean, I can tell you quite honestly that the immediate part of that process and my thinking was we've got to create a safer society. I mean, you mentioned one incident, but the problem is that is one incident of hundreds and hundreds of such incidents that happen all of the time across our communities of this province. And, you know, when, especially in our gang-ridden areas where learners have to do their homework underneath the dining room table because it's too dangerous to sit at the table because you could get taken out by a stray bullet. When young children are either going somewhere in the day or walking to school and they're stepping over dead bodies, they are all pushing each other to try and find out who this person is, and they know which gang they belong to. I mean, these are the things that break your heart when you kind of engage with communities. And you know, you've mentioned an incident, but that's exactly why this item became front and center in this 6th term of government once I got given this opportunity. That is why even before coming in after this election, I actually, at the end of our term, you know, applied to go and spend some time with community safety so I could get to understand better our existing systems of oversight and intervention and what else can we do. That's why I keep on calling for extra resources coming to this province. One would imagine that if you are the highest murder capital in our country, this is what is happening to our children every single day, that you would think that there would be allocation of even more resources, not just an equity in allocation across the province, but more resources. And quite frankly, the opposite is the case. We have too few policemen and women. We have too few POPs, policemen and women, by far the province with the least allocation. I mean, I'm not even going to start on the criminal justice system. We should be focusing very differently on our criminal justice system. I mean, let's just even think about how many people are actually let out without completing their sentences or having any kind of rehabilitation in our criminal system, in our prison systems. And if you speak to our police that are out there, they are under such severe pressure. They're not even told that these criminals are actually being let out early and put back on the streets. And it just exacerbates these crimes that we are having in our region. It is actually totally unacceptable, and that's why this plan and this real energy on focusing on trying to make a big difference in the lives of so many people in our province. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Premier. Honourable questions.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And the Premier said that. Deputy Speaker, we all, of course, understand the role of SAPS, but we also understand the role of the province. I've mentioned it that the Premier made a for safer communities. We heard the safety plan.
of cutting the murder rate in half. But it seems on the ground there's not safer communities. Just another example, in Bonteheuwel, I know sometime there was 100 law enforcement officers allocated to Bonteheuwel, but just reading yesterday again, they say the impoverished, crime-ridden Bonteheuwel has been blamed by gangsters and criminals taking over, hampering the needed development in the area. The one resident said that it's too often that crime is reported to law enforcement with no response. So Premier, I'm asking specifically, there's a lot of finances put to this problem, and I know it's top priority, but it seems to us that our communities are not benefiting by the safety plan. So I'm asking, I don't know, hotspots and all of that. Our children are being injured, our people are not safe, and I don't see the benefits, dividends of this 1.4 billion rand plan, safety plan. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Premier.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and to the honourable member. I mean, let's just look at numbers. So we have 20,000 police officers in our province, who are 20,000 that I want to say the majority of them really trying their best to make a difference. We are 4,500, probably from an equity point of view, short in policing in our province. But probably we should have another 5 to 6 to even 7,000 police men and women allocated to this province if we really wanted to start to make a dent. Now, we don't have control over that in the province. We keep on calling for it. We've even had intergovernmental disputes, a whole range of issues. But let's just say 20,000. Imagine if we have to put an extra 6,000 men and women on the streets to try to make communities safer, just from a policing numbers point of view, what that kind of budget would mean. So, of course, you're talking about a substantial amount of money in our existing budget, which is under severe pressure because we're not getting any new allocations from national government. And in actual fact, the national government has been running things really badly up until pre-COVID, and post-COVID, our finances are going to be in a really difficult situation in South Africa. We saw our growth numbers coming out, so you can just imagine what our tax revenues are going to be like. So obviously, I want to say to you that I would love to be able to put an extra few thousand men and women in boots on the ground to actually bring about change quicker. We have to do what we have to do within the framework and the options, and balancing out education, health issues, social services issues, all of the other departments, and taking on different new mandates that are not really funded. And of course, so these are the difficulties and choices that we have to make, and they're going to be even more difficult going forward over the next few months and years. But we will continue to put as much effort and resource into making this province a safer place for the very reason and very points that you bring up, Honourable Member, because people in our province deserve way better. And if they're not going to get that service out of a national government, then we have to then, as an unfunded mandate, really start to put as much resource into bringing about that difference while we continue with our disputes and pushing. And in actual fact, we would like a unison of calls from across this provincial government and provincial parliament, sorry. You know, every single political party should be at one and at idem, saying that we need more resources, we need more dedication, we need more focus on crime in this province, because we have to make a difference. And specifically the crime that you are talking about, where gangsters are shooting each other in open warfare in our communities, and not just shooting each other, but they are actually destroying lives of families, shooting children, etc., as you mentioned. We definitely need more resources and deserve better. And you know, we're almost at the second anniversary, almost 2 years since the re-establishment of the anti-gang unit. How many of those gang bosses have been arrested and put behind bars in the last 2 years? Not even going through the court process. Let's just talk about how many have been arrested. And you can walk in any street in any gang-infested area where citizens are traumatized by those very gangsters, and they will rattle off the names of the gangsters. Everybody knows who they are, and our anti-gang unit seems to be sitting on their thumbs. They don't seem to be able to do anything about it. It's almost that 2-year anniversary. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Premier. I recognise Honourable Botha.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Premier, I'd like to know what are the estimated job losses in the province as a result of the prolonged lockdown, and how will the provincial government manage this? Thank you.
Thank you, Premier.
Thank you very much to the honourable member for the question. So I want to say, straight out, I was going to say to you, in the hospitality industry, 104,000 jobs. Maybe a little glimmer of hope is that in last discussion with Minister Mania, it looks like that number has already dropped a little bit, because we have seen the hospitality industry opening up again, and we're really pushing very hard for anybody who can. I know that we've been telling everybody for months now, stay at home. Now I'm saying leave your home safely if you can and go and support a business, specifically someone in the hospitality industry. And when I say hospitality industry, it's not just B&Bs and hotels and restaurants. Remember, the hospitality industry is an engine room to jobs in our economy. It is those people who run little bakeries, who deliver croissants and bread to those restaurants or those hotels or those bed and breakfasts. It's the taxi driver or the tour guide. I'm glad to see that tour guides can now apply online for their registration. Thank you again to this department in economic development for making that available. We're innovating all the time. But so that's the biggest sector, and we really have to claw back as many of those jobs as we can as quickly as possible. And of course, a lot of those jobs rely on international travel. We don't have it open yet. We'll be pushing for the opening of international travel to come. But in the meantime, we've got to make sure that we get those businesses back up and running. The next sector is the construction sector. So we've seen a big slowdown. Even prior to COVID-19, we saw a slowdown in the construction industry. Over the last few years, we've been seeing of the big companies really going into business rescue. And there we're looking at 41,000 jobs. And then in the informal sector, around about 30,000 jobs, 28 to 30,000 jobs. And really, this is just three sectors where we're seeing big numbers of jobs. And that's why it is now pandemic number 2 is a pandemic. It is something that in our country, we have seen a GDP number come out this week that is mind-blowing. We used to get into a panic if we saw a 3% decline quarter on quarter. And now we're seeing 51% decline. And I also see some economists talking about whether it's 51 or not. But I mean, whether it's 40 or 50 or 60, I mean, if we panicked at 3%, it is really showing that it is a major disaster. So those are the three main sectors that we've got to really support to get back up and running as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Premier. Honourable Member.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to know from the Premier, how will the province work against the erosion of dignity in our communities as a result of the recent severe economic repercussions, please?
Thank you, Premier.
Okay, thank you. So obviously I've mentioned the job losses, and so we're focusing on, as a government, on three things. As I said in the previous question, continue with safety, jobs, and dignity. And this follow-up question on if you lose your job on the one side, you now are in that space where you lose dignity. If you cannot provide for your family, mother or father or both, and you lose your jobs and you can't feed your children, you can't support your mother, you can't, I mean, really, you start to lose dignity, you start to lose hope. And so it's about that safety net. So we've got to be focusing on that safety net. At the same time, we've really got to put a lot of energy into clawing back the lost jobs and creating an environment for entrepreneurs to develop whatever the new economy is coming out post-COVID-19. In this recovery stage, whether it is supporting someone with a meal or a voucher on the one side, finding some way to get some of those artisans and entrepreneurs back into jobs, and at the same time making it a safe environment. This is the three main focus areas that we are going to be putting our energy into as a government in the recovery phase. And I mean, your question about dignity is a very serious one, because And I look at some of these numbers, and it really does worry me that over the next few months, our citizens are going to be in a bad way. I mean, I just look at the number at the suicide numbers, and they are increasing. I was listening to a radio article this morning where NGOs that get calls for help, SOS type calls for help when people are feeling like maybe taking their own life, etc. And they say that their calls have doubled now in this time. So it really is a tough environment in which we've got to create this recovery plan. We've got to try to build hope and confidence in the system. And I think this calls again, battling COVID-19, I said there's no time for politics here. I think again, in recovery, we've all got to stand together like we've shown we can do. Irrespective of political allegiance, religious group, whatever, you stood up and you helped during COVID-19 feed communities. We've got to keep doing that. We've got to keep supporting each other, specifically over the next short term as we start to get recovery going. And dignity is a big role because dignity and hope go very much together. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. That brings us, due to time, at the end of questions to the Premier. I'll now be handing over to the Speaker.
Honorable Premier, honorable members, we're now moving to member statements. Honorable members, I recognize the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to George Bizzo, a pillar of justice and a force for good in our world. We all remember Nelson Mandela's iconic speech at the Rivonia trial, and I quote, "I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all people will live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal for which I hope to live for and to see realized. But if it needs to be, it is an ideal for which I'm prepared to die." Close quote. Not many of us realize that it was George Bizzo who advised Mandela to add, "if it needs to be." It was this closing speech of a monumental trial that set the stage for some of the darkest days which this country has experienced. We cannot forget that if it were not for the tireless work of the likes of George Bizzo, Mandela may not even have had the opportunity to make this speech and may even have been led to the gallows. Many remember the unwavering commitment of George Bizzo to the pursuit of justice. He faced a system which was overwhelmingly against him and which made the majority of South Africans furious in the land of their birth. Despite these odds, he was always there to defend those who stood for the freedom of everyone in our country. He stood for freedom, justice, equality, and a non-racial South Africa, and these principles he saw carried into the very heart of our Constitution. It was his untiring dedication to them that saw him continue to lobby for justice and human rights and rail against the betrayal of this principle by the party which he had once fought so hard to defend. He will always be remembered by showcasing the power of words that changed the shape of our country for the best. Speaker, we cannot just speak hollow words to George Bizzo. We must commit to the following his example at all times, for only then can we truly honor his memory. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Maseko. Honorable members, I recognize the African National Congress.
Thank you very much, Speaker. We face a massive challenge in regard to providing integrated human settlements and services to many communities. It's most acute here in Cape Town. The context is centuries of land dispossession, forced removals, evictions, and decades of apartheid spatial planning. We are seeing increasing attempts to occupy land. Some of these are driven by genuine frustrations and others by criminal syndicates and opportunists. As the ANC, we want to make it clear that we do not support evictions during the period of lockdown. The courts have condemned the city of Cape Town for the brutal way in which they conducted themselves. But at the same time, as the ANC, we are very clear that the attempted land invasions during the lockdown must also be condemned. Our actions and conduct must be guided by the Constitution and by the laws of our country. But it is clear that the struggle for land, services, and human settlements will continue. The DA cannot simply condemn land invasions, yet fail to provide a clear, time-bound, and well-communicated housing master plan. The plan must make it clear which parcels of land...
Thank you, Honorable Dagmo. There is a point of order. What's the point of order, Honorable Member?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to know if the Honourable Member will take a question.
No.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable
That's not a point of order, Speaker.
Yeah.
That's not a point of order to ask that you say
Thank you.
a question
Thank you.
to raise. You don't say
Thank
it's a
you,
point
Honorable
of order.
Members.
Yeah.
Honorable Dagmo, will you please
I have
proceed?
only 2 minutes and I've timed this, so please allow me to finish. We know that since 2009, there's been no building of human settlements which reverse apartheid spatial planning. Instead, the city has proceeded to sell council land. Now, the Cape High Court has instructed the city and the province to jointly file a comprehensive report on how to address this challenge of 31st of May, by 31st of May 2021. That was the Tafelberg judgment. The ANC appeals to the Premier to respect and abide by this ruling. This may be our last chance to develop a plan which gives hope to the city. A comprehensive and transparent land audit of all national, provincial, council, parastatal, and well-located private land must be produced and discussed openly with communities. Council-owned golf courses must also be on the agenda. There must be an immediate moratorium on the sale of all city land. Now, Speaker, more than ever, we need a cooperative government approach with all three spheres tackling this crisis together. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Dagmo. Honorable Members, I recognize the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Speaker, the Democratic Alliance supported the initial hard lockdown, but consistently called for the gradual, safe reopening of the economy. This plea fell on deaf ears for months and led to a dramatic decline of our economy's GDP. Speaker, it is not COVID-19 that caused this decline. It is purely a result of the ANC's bizarre regulations and failure to implement economic reform to match the needs of our time. The reality is that the ANC in the Western Cape singled out this province in various calls for it to return to alert level 5 of the lockdown. Likewise, the EFF in this province stated that we should not have been permitted to remove to lower lockdowns. The truth is, Speaker, is that the DA appeals for safe resumption of economic activity was the right one. This is given that we now face a second pandemic of unemployment and an annualized quarterly contraction of the economy by 51%. For the citizen in South Africa, this means economic and employment opportunities are severely hampered. It means that more people join the food poverty line and food packs become temporary relief. Speaker, the Western Cape government partners with such heroes in our civil society and together works towards provision of dignity, jobs, and a safe future. I wish to welcome and support the financial assistance of 160,000 Rand to the Plumbago Community Garden in Lentegeur, Mitchells Plain from the Department of Agriculture Affairs and Minister Ivan Meyer. This initiative forms part of the Greater Food Security Commodity Project, which aims to empower communities and equip them with the necessary infrastructure and skills to ensure sustainable food security in our communities. Speaker, the ANC is not serious about restoring the livelihoods of citizens. Their silence on the recovery plans and tender fraud speaks volumes. Just yesterday, President Ramaphosa admitted that such corruption related to PPE procurement is tantamount to murder. But here in the Western Cape, we get back to work. We build and support sustainable practices like food security to empower and provide opportunities for our residents like the food gardens in Mitchells Plain. The DA-led Western Cape government will ensure it explores and utilizes every opportunity possible to support community-based initiatives and improves the dignity of all people.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable members, I recognize the good party. Honorable Heron.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, public land is in the custody of various governments as an accident of history. All three spheres of government have a constitutional obligation to use public land they hold in their custody to advance their constitutional duty to provide adequate housing. This DA government has openly demonstrated that they do not accept this or they do not understand this. Premier Winde has said repeatedly that he will only release public land for housing if the national government does so first. This policy is unlawful and it is immoral. The Premier and the DA are hostile to providing decent housing. Why will they not allocate land for housing when it is so desperately needed, unless the national government does so first? Yet they can provide 1.3 billion rand for policing in the city of Cape Town, when policing is not a provincial mandate, and with no condition that national government must match this. We will never be a safe city if we are not a just and a housed one. This government was caught out by the Western Cape High Court, which recorded in its Tafelberg judgment the former head of the Provincial Department of Human Settlements saying, "For the record, it needs to be stated that until now, no property that resorted under the custodianship of the Provincial Department of Transport and Public Works has been released and used for human settlement development." In contrast, the Provincial Department of Human Settlements has already transferred the custodianships of literally hundreds of hectares of service sites to the Department of Transport and Public Works for educational and other purposes. The court said it was apparent that the former HOD of Housing had a good understanding of the imperatives of land reform and housing as contemplated in sections 25 and 26 of the Constitution. It is really shocking to learn that the provincial government had never released land in the custody of its Public Works Department for housing purposes. If the DA has a problem with the slow release of land in the custody of national government, then lead by example. Look to the land in your own custody and release it for housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Heron. Order, honorable members. Honorable members, I recognize the African Christian Democratic Party. Honorable Christians.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, as a member of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, I've asked the Western Cape Police Ombudsman to investigate a matter regarding the death of a young innocent boy, namely Leo Williams, 89. We as the African Christian Democratic Party in the Western Cape is outraged at the killing of Leo Williams. Leo was shot by a stray rubber bullet reportedly fired by a police officer on the 31st of July 2020. What shocks us is that he was indoors at the time of the shooting. On Saturday, the 5th of September 2020, the St. Helena residents held a peaceful demonstration and handed over a memorandum to the station commander. Residents are also calling for the station commander to step down. What is further bothering is the further dissatisfaction that IMPIT is dragging its feet. As the ACDP in the Western Cape, we believe someone should take responsibility for the death because the shots were fired during a service delivery protest. Williams was fighting for his life in the Red Cross Children's Hospital in Cape Town, but unfortunately, he succumbed to the injuries 2 weeks later. Our prayers goes out to the family. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. Honorable members, I recognize the African National Congress.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The ANC in the Western Cape is saddened by the news that veteran human rights lawyer and anti-apartheid activist has passed away at the age of 92. We dip our revolutionary flag and salute him for his pivotal role he played in the struggle against apartheid. George Bizos arrived in South Africa with his father in 1941, having fled the Nazi-occupied Greece. In 1947, he applied at Wits to study medicine, but he was rejected. That's how he ended up studying law and going to lead a successful life as a renowned and revered human rights champion and one of the architects of our constitution. He was respected by Madiba, his fellow treason trialists, and the ANC in general. He moved from being Nelson Mandela's legal colleague and later became his legal representative during the famous Rivonia trial, and years later, he would attend secret meetings with O.R. Tambo in exile. He appeared in numerous inquests into deaths in detention during apartheid, including those of Steve Biko, Ahmed Timol, and Neil Argent. He also appeared for families of mine workers at the Marikana Commission of Inquiry. He was indeed a gentle giant and human rights champion. We convey our heartfelt condolences to his family, friends, and colleagues in various foundations of former apartheid activists and ANC in general. Nelson Mandela has said about him, while open quote, while I was in prison on Robben Island and in other jails, George Bizos was one of my major lifelines and a confidant whom I could send to assure O.R. Tambo in Lusaka of the preliminary negotiations I was conducting for the release of our comrades and plans to end apartheid. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Leke. Your time is up. Honorable members, I recognize the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. At this stage, there have been 12 additional attacks on emergency medical staff compared to the same period last year in the Western Cape. Upon a visit to the Worcester EMS Centre on the 3rd of September, one of the paramedics explained their traumatic experience when responding to a rape case where a minor was left to die. Speaker, this is the brutal nature of the work of paramedics. But in addition, they are subject to an increasing level of criminal attacks. One of the latest attacks on EMS staff came after a hoax call to the emergency call center. When reaching their provided location, paramedics were held at gunpoint and they were robbed. Speaker, this illustrates that attacks are no longer merely opportunistic or of grave concern, but a matter of special investigation. I am appalled by these senseless attacks. The call to behavioral change in communities towards our paramedics is not enough. While these men and women continue to put their lives at risk in the execution of their duties, over the long weekend last month, EMS in the province responded to over 5,000 incidents. Not a single staff member at the centre in Worcester, as informed, went on leave during the COVID-19 period. Speaker, irrespective of the immense pressure and trauma they experience, our EMS personnel continue to serve communities in exceptionally challenging circumstances. What was significant during the visit was the camaraderie amongst these workers and their commitment and dedication towards their service. Speaker, paramedics and EMS service are invaluable to communities, especially where individuals are unable to seek urgent medical assistance. Speaker, as people of this province, in conclusion, Speaker, today I rise in solidarity with every emergency medical staff member.
You're done now. Your time is up. You only have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Murray, Freedom Front Plus.
Thank you, Speaker. In light of the unacceptable high instances of reported corruption in various provinces with regard to tenders for the supply of personal protective equipment, the Freedom Front Plus requests that the Premier and his executive of the Western Cape allow themselves to be held to a higher standard of ethical behavior and accountability than the rest of the country. The Freedom Front Plus therefore requests that urgent, decisive actions be taken against any officials, members or suppliers who are convicted of corrupt activities during or after the lockdown period. We call further on all political parties in this House to cooperate with the Premier and his executive in this regard.
Thank you, Honorable Murray. Honorable members, I recognize Al-Jama. Honorable Brenkes. Thank you, honorable members. I now, at this point, request that the member of the executive who so wish to respond to the member statements in terms of Rule 145. Is there another one? All right, why is that at the back there? There is the last one, and that is the Democratic Alliance, before the responses.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, this week the Community Safety Standing Committee received a briefing from the Western Cape Police Ombudsman. The Ombudsman presented the status of the Victim Empowerment Service administered by SAPS, which we have come to realise is in an utter breakdown of this national programme. Out of 10, 7 gender-based violence victims are neither informed of their right to protection nor their right to be treated with fairness and respect at SAPS stations. Speaker, victims need to feel safe, secure, protected, and given the time and space to talk and come to terms with their trauma. But oftentimes the victims are left to sit in an open space under the glare of everyone to see, like the rape survivor who attempted to report a rape at the affluent police station, but instead had to sit in the charge office for 4 hours. In a further incident, a young LGBTQ person was not afforded the opportunity to make a statement and receive support after surviving rape. They were instead told by a SAPS official to go home and not take a bath, but to return the following day. Speaker, such an atrocious status quo speaks to the dire problem that less than 10% of members elected to be trained for the National Victim Empowerment Training Program have been sent for such training by SAPS. Further, none of the survivors were informed of their right to compensation or their right to protection. When we have cases of rape survivors being refused support and a pathetic 20% of the complainants interviewed in a victim-friendly room or private room, we cannot be surprised that the trust in our police has eroded. As a result, cases go unreported and the cycle of violence is perpetuated. SAPS is the custodian of rape kits, and when these kits are unavailable, victims are forced to sit with and to be surrounded by the evidence of their violation. Mr. Speaker, they cannot escape the scene of the crime because they are the evidence. SAPS thus fails to protect the victim due to negligence, an unorganized system, and just plain corruption. What is meant to be the initial point of entry to the criminal justice system for the majority has become a hostile environment where victims of violence ought to receive care, support, and a pathway to justice. Their rights are instead trampled on. The National Victim Empowerment Program is failed to preserve
Honorable
dignity,
Bosman.
life, abuse.
Your
Thank
time
you,
is
Speaker.
up. Thank you, Honorable Bosman. Honorable members, I would like to request at this stage the members of the executive who so wish to respond to the member statements to do so for no longer than 5 minutes. Honorable Simmers.
No, thank you, Speaker. Speaker, for the past 4 weeks, we have had to entertain various members making utterances, utilizing very lucrative and creative ways to package their version of the Western Cape reality. Sometimes it was not even based on fact, but very good fiction. And yet again, over the past 4 weeks, we've been very transparent in responding with facts because the people of the Western Cape deserve facts, not a story that sounds good to evoke emotions, as sadly Member Heron is continuously doing. And before I became a member of the executive, I took an oath of office, which means one of those aspects is I must tell the truth and I must act in the interest of the people of this province. Yet the same member who is seemingly for the last 4 weeks trying to weave a story of good intentions for his own outcomes, not in the interest of the people of this province, has now continuously reiterated a fact that is not true. But Speaker, what he does rightfully point out during his statement today, the Honourable Member Speaker, is that all three spheres of government have a role to play. And from the Western Cape side, this provincial government has released provincially owned land that is in excess of 365 hectares, that's the exact hectareage, for the development of human settlements across the Western Cape. Municipalities have also contributed their state-owned land within their boundaries for the development of state-owned land. Now that's two spheres of government that I am referring to, Honourable Speaker. But furthermore, there is a further 3 parcels of land, or specifically provincially owned land, either custodianship of transport and public works of the Western Cape, which has long gone been known to be earmarked for development, but due to litigation, they cannot go to the next stage. And these are the Conradi site, which we already know will yield 3,500 housing opportunities. 49% of that is going to be social housing. We are aware of the Woodstock Hospital and all the litigation surrounding that matter. Thirdly, the Allen Bowden site, which will yield 302 social housing opportunities. Honourable Speaker, members of this House must not be disingenuous in trying to utilize their warped version or selective information from a specific court judgment to suit their own no-good agenda. The time of playing with the people's emotions of the Western Cape is gone. They need to hear the truth, the real truth, not some good story to tell. So the provincial government and the municipalities within the Western Cape are playing their part to execute the constitutional mandate when it comes to making developable land available for human settlements development. Sadly, there's one sphere missing here, the National Department of Transport and Public Works. Yes, we've heard glamorous stories and statements about this 14,000 hectares, when on the 20th of August, Honourable Speaker, in the House, or the National Assembly, I beg your pardon, the same minister had to admit that they are investigating certain matters. So I would encourage the Honourable Member, before he reiterates and tries to invoke unnecessary emotions, get your facts straight. This provincial government is doing what it's supposed to do according to the constitutional mandate. Our municipalities are doing what they are supposed to be doing. Get on board, get the National Department of Transport and Public Works on board, because then we can truly say all three spheres of government are working together. Honourable Speaker, in conclusion, there is an Afrikaans saying, ek kan die donkie na die water vat, maar ek kan hom nie maak drinkie, net soos 'n donkie sy kop 2 keer op dieselfde klip moet kap. The Honourable Member Heren kap het al vir 4 weke. As tyd dat die goeie stories se einde moet kry, na die realiteit aan die kiesers van die Weskaap moet verkondig word. Baie dankie.
Thank you.
Order, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Simmers. Honorable members, that concludes member statements.
Speaker.
Is there a point of order, Honorable the Chief Whip of the Opposition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to raise an order on what Member Simmers has just said. He used an idiom in Afrikaans referring to a member of this House to a donkey. Now, I would like to rule whether that phrase is parliamentary.
Order, honorable members. This is a point of order. Let's hear the honorable member. Are you done, Honorable?
No,
Leka?
Speaker. I actually wanted you to rule whether the phrase donkey that MEC Simmers has just used, referring to a member of the South, is it parliamentary or not?
Thank you, Honorable Leka. Honorable members, I wish to rule immediately on this matter. I've just been advised by the table staff that this is not a reference to a member, and therefore the point of order is not sustained. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, my Afrikaans is getting polished, Honorable Leka, so I know next time I will be A-grade Afrikaans. I keep learning every day. May I request honorable members that we deal with the motions and notices of motions will go first. I recognize Honorable Murray in the House.
Thank you, Speaker, for the elevation of my opportunity to speak. I move with notice that in light of several court rulings in favor of illegal land invaders in the Western Cape, that the Western Cape government, in cooperation with the metro and rural municipalities, draft a code of conduct for members of the anti-land invasion units to bring their conduct in line with our country's Bill of Rights in respect of people's dignity, resisting the use of excessive force, and confiscating of people's personal belongings of the evictees. I further move that this House request the Minister of Local Government to engage with mayors of municipalities and remind them that any operation involving the eviction of people occupying illegal structures should be done with the cooperation of the court sheriff as stipulated in Section 4, subsection 11 of the PI Act. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Murray. Honorable members, I recognize Honorable Christians.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the African Christian Democratic Party moves with notice that this House debates the taxi wars in the Western Cape. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. Honorable members, I recognize Honorable Murray.
Speaker, thank you. I move with notice that following the briefing by the police ombudsman on the 8th of September 2020 and the testimony of a complainant, Ms. Lucinda Evans, I move that this House recommends the establishment of an independent Western Cape Provincial Task Team or Committee mandated by the Western Cape Minister of Community Safety after consultation with the Provincial Police Commissioner to randomly and regularly inspect police stations across the Western Cape and to produce a quarterly report to the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Safety with regard to the conditions which exist at police stations and the treatment experienced by rape victims and those of the LGBT community when cases of assault or rape are reported. I so move.
The notice is taken, Honorable Murray. Honorable members, I recognize Honorable Brenkes. Thank you, Honorable members. All right, Honorable Brenkes.
Thank you, Speaker. Our Jamal moves, despite the many concerns and justifiable objections raised by teachers, trade unions, and individuals on the return to school of all learners, schools still have reopened nonetheless. We are aware that majority of our schools lack the basic resources to adhere to the COVID-19 safety regulations. When it comes to personal protective equipment, schools are now in full swing, but the concerns still remain on a number of matters, such as who sees to the transport supplied by the department adhere to the safety regulations as well as private transport used by thousands of learners. The social support for teachers and learners who may be traumatized by the loss of a loved one or the fear of contracting the virus. That masks be used by all children, irrespective of the quintile school they attend. There are many children from non-affluent homes who attend quintile 4 and 5 schools. We further urge the department to work closer with teachers, unions, and involve them in doing proper risk assessment at school. I so move. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Brenkes. Honorable members, I just want to request to the honorable members that we distinguish between the members' notices of motion and motions without notice. If we continue on this trajectory, we might find confusion, and I would like to request that there are no overlaps in this regard. The procedural unit will advise also the party workers to assist so that the overlap does not continue. So honorable members must please assist me in this regard. May I then at this point request Honorable Maran?
Speaker, thank you. On behalf of the African National Congress, a motion with notice that this House debates the information coming forward indicating overpricing, fraud and theft with the procurement of COVID-19 equipment in the DA around Western Cape and municipal governments. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Maran. The notice is taken. Honorable members, I recognize Honorable Said.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move without notice that this legislature deliberates on the continued rape and sexual harassment of learners at Western Cape education institutions. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Said. The notice is taken. Honorable members, I recognize Honorable Mvimbi.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I move a motion that the House discuss the inappropriate usage of pre-approved contract to supply COVID-19 personal protective equipment, also known as PPEs, during the pandemic. In the light of these contracts awarded by the Western Cape Provincial Government at least 2.5 years before coronavirus without entering into any additional competitive procurement processes. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Mvimbi. The notice is taken. I recognize Honorable Kama.
Thank you very much, Speaker. On behalf of the ANC of President Nelson Mandela, I move a motion with notice that this legislature deliberates and examine why National Police Commissioner General Kehla Sithole, upon request, only received 10 competency certificates from the about 1,200 city law enforcement officers, and why the other competency certificates are still outstanding, and call on the Metro Police Chief, Wayne Leroux, to explain why these officers are deemed to be above the law by not having the legally required certificates. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Kama. The notice is taken. I now recognize Honorable Nkondlo.
Thank you, Speaker. I move with notice that the House debates the special report by the Auditor General on the financial management of government's COVID-19 initiatives, in particular the findings on the Western Cape government. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Nkondlo. The notice is taken. Honorable members, I recognize Honorable Nkondlo again.
Thank you, Somlomo. I move with notice that the House mandates the Honourable Speaker to bring to the House through the Standing Committee of Finance a progress report regarding the process to develop the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Bill for the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Nkondlo. The notice is taken and it shall be actioned. Honorable members, that concludes the notices of motion. We now move to motions without notice. I recognize Honorable Christians.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the African Christian Democratic Party, ACDP in the Western Cape, would like to acknowledge the 18-year-old Nyanga schoolgirl, Eswe Mafifa, for creating an e-hailing taxi service for women to protect them from gender-based violence. Speaker, we are referring to a recent article which highlighted started a Women Go service for women to protect them from gender-based violence, as well as creating jobs for women. She created this platform made up only of female drivers to ensure that women can travel safely to work, although she never experienced violence herself. She's also developing an app that will be available soon. Speaker, with this inspiration to all women in the country, the ACDP would like to wish her well in her future endeavors. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. Honorable members, I recognize Honorable Brenkes.
Mr. Speaker, is the motion passed to the House?
Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable members, in dealing with the previous question by Honorable Christians, I would like to put to the House whether there are any objections.
No.
No objections. Motion agreed to. Thank you, Chief Whip, for drawing my attention to that. Honorable members, I recognize Honorable Brenkes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The Al-Jama would like to move without notice and recognize the 6 to 12 September as BC Week in commemoration of our struggle icon, Steve Biko, leader of the Black Consciousness Movement. Steve Biko had a roadblock in August 1977 near Port Elizabeth with fellow comrade Peter Cyril Jones. After several days of brutal torture by the white security police, Biko died on 12 September 1977. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Brenkes. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion?
Object.
There is an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. Honorable members.
Wow, that yet Helen Zeller praises. Helen Zeller
sounds like Honorable Fritz.
Order, honorable members. I now recognize Honorable Kama.
Thank you very much, Speaker. On behalf of the ANC of Comrade Nelson Mandela, I move a motion without notice that this legislature notes a senior treasurer official of this provincial government appeared in court the 14th time after an alleged rape on a 7-year-old minor, notes statements by MECs that members of the Provincial Department of Community Safety's Watching Brief Unit attend these court appearances and keeps an eye on it. Further notes that I personally attended and checked on the last court appearance, and there was no person other than myself, an advocate who assisted the victims' parents, and the regular court officials. And notes too that this means someone is misleading the MEC to believe this serious case is under surveillance by a special unit attending court cases. I so move.
Object. Who does he know? Who's our official?
Thank you.
Object.
I asked
Honorable
if one,
members,
yes, was one from the
order.
Washington Proceedings.
Order. It's an objection. It's not a debate. There's an objection. The motion will be printed in the order paper. I now recognize Honorable Bartman.
Thank you, Chairperson. Speaker, can you hear me? I've had quite a bit of connectivity problems today.
Yes, we can hear you, all of us, Honorable Member.
Loud and clear.
Thank you. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I move that this House notes that the Clicks Group and Theresa May of the Unilever Group were recently at the center of a controversy which assigned positive words to persons with Caucasian hair and negative words to persons with Afro-textured hair, expresses disappointment that such controversy took place in our society, which continues to struggle with racial discrimination, commends the Clicks Group for acting in an appropriate manner by issuing apologies, withdrawing the offensive third-party images, taking further steps to engage stakeholders, auditing third-party and own promotional material for implicit and explicit bias, ensuring diversity and inclusivity training for their head office employees, and prioritizing their diversity and inclusivity training program, calls on all stakeholders in the hair products industry to evaluate their promotional material and critically reflect on the values which their products promote so that no one single beauty standard is promoted at the expense of others, condemns violent action taken by political opportunists which resulted in the destruction of property and loss of economic activity, particularly in the second pandemic of unemployment, encourages the Clicks Group to lay criminal charges against those who called for and participated in such violent action, and acknowledges the beauty of natural Afro-textured hair and calls on everyone with this hair to feel nothing but pride and joy and to continue to celebrate it every day of their life. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Bartman. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Motion agreed. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Mvimbi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I raise a motion without notice that the legislature note that one person died and the woman was critically injured when their car got hit by a truck on the crossing of the R44 and R101 at Clapnets, and call for a probe into the safety of this crossing. I so move, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Mvimbi. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed. Honorable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Speaker, I hereby move without notice on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that the House expresses its tremendous grief over the passing of Advocate George Bizos, knows that Advocate Bizos is a shining example of a principled human being who was dedicated to the pursuit of human rights for all, and is most well known for his role in the treason and Livonia trials, providing hope for many during the darkest hours of apartheid. Notes the vital role and extension of his hope through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where he fought for justice for victims of apartheid crimes, commends Advocate Bizos' pursuit of a free, equal, and non-racial South Africa, cementing these principles as the foundation of our Constitution and Bill of Rights, and further acknowledges that Advocate Bizos was never one to ignore injustice, and as such, in recent times, was a vocal critic of the high levels of corruption, the lack of principled leaders, and a disregard for the human rights of the poor and the most vulnerable in our country, and resolve at the current sitting with permission of the Speaker for members of this House to rise and observe a moment of silence in the memory of Advocate George Bizos. I so move, Speaker.
Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice?
No.
No objections. Motion agreed to. I would like to request the House to rise for a moment of silence. May his soul rest in peace. May all be seated. Thank you, honorable members. Honorable Kama.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the African National Congress of Comrade Nelson Mandela, I move a motion without notice that this legislature notes the ANC welcomes every effort to improve SAPS services to the people, and so does SAPS leadership. Further, the ANC lauds the Western Cape community crime fighting structures for the support given to CPFs in the fight against gender-based violence. And finally, note that the ANC supports the Standing Committee's resolution that a meeting of social development, the Department of Community Safety and SAPS needs to be convened to look into the victim empowerment program. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Kama. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, I move without notice that this House conveys its deepest condolences to the family and friends of Juanita Williams, a 31-year-old mother of 3 whose life has been brutally taken away from her and her body dumped in a field in Houston by a person known to the family. The House further urges the relevant law enforcement agencies to leave no stone unturned to ensure that the perpetrator is brought to book in order for justice to be served. May the family and friends of the deceased find solace in the love of the Lord. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Maseko. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Kama.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the ANC, I move a motion that this House notes the 10-year-old Pabut boy, Nehemiah Aris, who was on Monday hit in the head by a stray bullet during a Grassy Park gang shooting while playing in the street, died in hospital after life support had been switched off on Tuesday. Commiserates with all family and friends who lost somebody dear to them in this ongoing street war by gangs, and commends SAPS for taking into custody 2 suspected men. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Kama. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable America.
Honorable Speaker, I move without notice that this House condemn the nepotism and cronyism the ANC has displayed in rejecting a possible candidate for a job. In a sworn affidavit, unemployed Juliana Farad stated that the executive mayor of the Matsukama municipality, Matilda Baines, offered her a job within the EPW program. Subsequent to this, the offer was retracted as Juliana is no longer an ANC member. Speaker, the ANC has recently raised the issue of nepotism within a department, yet seems to be silent when a municipality under their control rejecting an individual from a livelihood, depriving an individual from a livelihood. We cannot allow this bias and nepotism to deprive our people from earning a living. Speaker, that this House further notes the ANC through its policy of cadre deployment has failed Juliana Farad and many others. Speaker, it is further noted that Juliana Farad has laid a criminal charge
I
at the
object in
Cloudwood Police
advance.
Station on the 2nd of September 2020 against the mayor, and we call upon the ANC and the police to act swiftly in this manner. I so move.
Object.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable America. Honorable members, the objection is noted and the motion will be printed in the order paper. Honorable members, I recognize Honorable Mvimbi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I raise without notice, motion without notice that the legislator knows that a female bus passenger was caught on Sunday on the N2 near Plettenberg Bay with Mendrex tablets worth more than 700,000 rand in her possession. She will soon reappear in court and would like South African Police Service for tightening its tackle to catch and bring draft traffickers to book. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Mvimbi. Honorable members, are there no objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I recognize Honorable Philander.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I move without notice that this House notes the commemoration of Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder Day on the 9th of September, that the emphasis be placed on the fact that no amount of alcohol is safe during pregnancy, that the House further notes that the FAST disorder is 100% preventable, and therefore consuming alcohol during pregnancy is a choice that affects our future generations at large. And Speaker, that we thank the Western Cape Department of Health for the concerted efforts in creating awareness and prevention programs in our various communities. I so move.
Dopstelsel.
Thank you, Honorable Philander. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. Honorable members, I recognize Honorable Kama.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the ANC, I move a motion without notice that this legislature notes a former station commander of SAPS in Otoren and Athlone Brigadier L. January, of 59 years old, is one of the latest COVID-19 victims. Notes this diabetic who overcame cancer died after 56 days on a ventilator in a coma. That condolences be sent to her family, friends, and colleagues. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Kama. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable America.
Thank you, Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes the plight of the residents of the Mtsikama municipality. The residents have battled under the rule of the ANC as problems within the municipality have continued to worsen. Service delivery, amongst others, has seen a rapid decline within the town, and the town being left without water for 3 days without water a week ago. The ANC has proceeded to replace the speaker in the said municipality by appointing another illegally. They are now looking to remove the mayor from power as well. Speaker, that this House further notes that the Good and ANC coalition have failed the residents of Mtsikama municipality. While they continue to fight amongst each other to have access to resources and positions, critical service delivery and vacancies are not filled. Speaker, I call upon the ANC to desist from viewing the municipality as a cash cow, restore stability, and focus on service delivery. I so move.
Object.
Thank you, Honorable members. Honorable America, there's an objection.
must win
There's an
elections.
objection and the motion will be printed in the order paper. I now recognize Honorable Van Vogel.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the ANC, I move without notice that this legislature notes that the non-profit organization Give of the Givers has contributed 10 million to spruce up a 60-bed ward at the new Mitchell's Plain Hospital. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Van Vogel. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice?
Speaker, that last part cut off. Sorry.
All right.
I do apologize. The last part cut off.
Thank you, Honorable Mackenzie. We had everything. Maybe it's your part. Is it the problem with everyone, Honorable members?
No, I hear to my side also, Speaker.
No, we heard the motion. We heard the motion, Speaker.
Yeah, it's only him.
Because we heard from this side, so I wanted to know whether is it a problem that side only. Okay. All right. Are there any objections to the motion? Who is that? Is that the Chief Whip?
It's Deirdre
Honorable
Bartman.
Partner?
Apologies. You didn't see my hand, so I thought I would just quickly try to speak to you directly. Speaker, not all of us have the same connectivity, and we don't all have super fast bandwidth. And I would like to support the request just to read the last sentence, please, just so that all of us can be in the same WhatsApp group today. Thank you.
No, man.
Oh. Thank you, Honorable Partman. The members were saying they had the motion. So if you are also affected, then we're going to allow the honorable member to go ahead and read the motion again. Honorable Van Vogel.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the ANC, I move without notice that this legislature notes that the non-profit organization Give of the Givers has contributed 10 million to spruce up a 60-bed ward at the new Mitchell's Plain Hospital. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Van Vogel. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice?
Object.
No objections. Who's objecting?
Me.
Who's objecting?
Objecting donation.
Because we don't
Who's
know.
an objection?
Is
It's
it the
true, I was
DA?
there. No objections. No objections.
No, but you must be clear. You object, then you no objections.
These issues
Order,
must be discussed.
order, honorable members.
So there's a caucus that sits
Honorable
before
members.
there's a party
There's
caucus
two
that sits.
focuses in the DA. They are divided on these issues.
Order,
No,
honorable
Chair, we're not
members.
objecting, Chair.
Order, honorable members. I can see who's talking, and I'm going to call you by name, and I wouldn't want to do that. Please let us pay attention and be honorable in our behavior here, so that the House can proceed smoothly. Are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections, motion agreed to. Honorable members, I recognize Honorable Mitchell.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Speaker, I move without notice on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House congratulates the Western Cape Department of Transport and Public Works Red Dot Taxi Transport Service as they have reached new service delivery milestones. Notes the Red Dot Taxi Service has conducted over 70,000 passenger trips, over 1.1 million passenger kilometers, welcomes that the service has completed over 10,000 passenger trips for residents who are transported to and from COVID-19 quarantine facilities, underscores the importance of extraordinary steps the Western Cape government takes to ensure the safety of all its healthcare workers, as well as its residents, and extends its gratitude to residents of the province who have heeded the call for individual behavioral change in the light of the health pandemic, and further notes that together with government, the private and public sectors, we have collectively achieved great progress in decreasing active COVID-19 cases in the Western Cape. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Mitchell. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections, motion agreed to. And I now recognize Honorable Kama.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the ANC, I move a motion without notice that this House notes the alleged murderer of the hosting mother of three, Jay Velamse, who was brutally killed by a boyfriend, appeared in the Hermanas Magistrate Court, and that the accused abandoned his bail application and must appear again on the 8th of October 2020. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Kama. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Philander.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I move without notice that this House notes that the Standing Committee for Health on 9 September 2020 conducted an unannounced oversight visit to the T.C. Newman Community Day Centre, that the multi-party committee unanimously resolved to congratulate the Western Cape Department of Health and the facility management on the management procedures and protocols in place to best serve the health needs within the community. And that the House further notes that the committee further resolved that the T.C. Newman CDC is indeed a sterling example of healthcare excellence. I so move, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Philander. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Syed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move without notice that this legislature commends the Ahlul Bayt Foundation of South Africa and the Gift of the Givers for their generous contributions, working with the Cape Town Central and Atlantic Seaboard Parliamentary Constituency Office, which has made it possible for food to be provided to more than 1,000 Imizamo residents who lost their homes due to fires in the early hours of Sunday morning. I so move, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Syed. Honorable members, are there no objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Kama.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the ANC, I move a motion without notice that this House notes law enforcement officers of Cape Town who do not have the legally required competency certificates must cease all work and join with the Metro Police, as they may only operate with SAPS as leading agent, and notes the majority could not produce these competency certificates when required, and that Cape Town ROC units had to be summoned to appear last week at a parliamentary portfolio committee to examine the humiliation of a Khayelitsha resident who was arbitrarily evicted, pulled naked from his dwelling and publicly assaulted, thereby violating the COVID-19 lockdown laws. I so move.
Object. This was leading the House.
Thank you. Thank you, honorable members.
All
This
those
is not a
certificates
debate.
were handed over
It's
to the
a
police.
motion. There is an
There's nothing
objection.
handed
The
over.
motion will be printed in the order paper. I now recognize Honorable Kama again.
Object in advance.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister Fritz. Order, honorable members.
Honorable Speaker.
Order, honorable members. You cannot object to the motion before it's raised.
I withdraw. I withdraw.
Honorable Mitchell, what's your point of order?
Honourable Speaker, I don't know if I misheard or heard incorrectly that what the Honourable Chief Whip of the opposition said, but I heard an unparliamentary word
She did say
during that utterances. So without casting aspersions on the member, I would ask if you could ask the member if she in fact did say so, and then revert back to the House.
What did she say?
He's not even sure.
She used. She said "cuck," Speaker.
I Aibo.
Order, honorable members. No, Aibo. Order, honorable members. Honorable the Chief Whip of the Opposition. Do you want to tell the House what exactly you said?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, let me say, I find it very, very mischievous of the Deputy Chief Whip to assume that I have used a swearing word in this House. And therefore, I would first say that he must withdraw as soon as I finish responding exactly as to what I said. Now, this is what I said. Hi, mka. Now, when you say mka in Xhosa, you are saying go away. So I wish Honorable Mitchell can then go back to what he said and take back that word. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Leke. Thank you, Honorable Leke. Honorable members, that's the statement to clarify what Honorable Member Leke said. Are there any further points of order?
Speaker, if I may.
There was a request.
Speaker, if I may.
Honorable Mitchell.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, as I stated when I raised your attention to that, and I deliberately said that I don't want to cast aspersions on the member if I didn't hear correctly. So I have no objection to withdraw that insinuation.
So you are withdrawing that insinuation?
Yes, absolutely, Speaker.
Thank you. We just wanted to hear the withdrawal. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Chief. All right. Honorable Mackenzie, your hand is up. Is it inadvertently up?
Honorable Speaker, may I address you?
Is that a point of order?
Yes, Honorable Speaker.
You may continue, Honorable Mackenzie.
Honorable Speaker, I would honestly prefer if the Speaker, would listen to Hansard and provide this House with a clear ruling, because I heard something similar. Now, we're allowed to misheard. We not all have the same ears, but I prefer to go back because that was hard and loud, and I prefer to come back to the House.
Someone must not speak in a mother tongue.
Order, honorable members. I've already ruled on the matter. Let us proceed.
Don't know the rules.
I now recognize, honorable members, the matter was clarified by both members, and there's an agreement reached. The Deputy Chief Whip of the DA accepted the explanation and the motivation to what was being said, and that was settled. He withdrew. Now let us proceed as honorable members and get on with the business of the day. I now recognize Honorable Mkonto. Honorable Mackenzie.
Now, my hand was up on the same point of order. Now, the Deputy Speaker can't withdraw on my behalf. I raise the same point of order, Honorable Speaker.
Can I address you, Speaker?
All right. Honorable members, do you want to sit here until tomorrow? I can give you that.
Not really.
Because what is happening now, we're having a debate on the matter that has already been resolved. So, Honorable Member Mackenzie, you're saying you're not satisfied, and that's what you are saying. I don't want to recognize any other person. I've already ruled on this matter and I'm proceeding. So if a member is not happy, you follow the rules to engage the Speaker. Let us proceed. Honorable Mkonto.
Speaker.
Thank you. Apologies, Speaker.
Order, honorable members. Honorable Mkonto, please stand down. There is Honorable Kama that I've omitted.
Oh.
He has two motions following each other. Honorable Kama.
Thank you very much, Speaker. A motion without notice on behalf of the ANC that the House notes 3 young victims were shot and killed yesterday in a grassy park fish shop. An armed man followed 2 people into the shop and started shooting randomly. The 3rd victim worked at the shop. The shooter then fled. Calls on subs to ensure that justice prevails. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Kama. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections, motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Nkondlo.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that the House calls on the Honorable Premier Alan Winde to engage the Cape Town Mayor Dan Plauto to reconsider the stance of the city not to review the current water tariffs that are high and punitive, given the above 95% dam levels due to the recent good rain. Notes this is critical as a reprieve to many households and businesses in this constrained economic climate, but also to support economic recovery. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Nkondlo. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. The Premier says he'll talk to the Mayor. No objections. Motion agreed to. With that statement that the Premier will talk to the Mayor. Honorable members, I recognize Honorable Kama.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the ANC, I move a motion without notice that this House notes and lots subs who followed a hijacked carrier truck to Krafontein and arrested 3 suspects with stolen goods valued around 1 million rand and 2 guns illegally in their possession. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Kama. Honorable members, there's a mic that is on somewhere. Thank you, Honorable members. Are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objection. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Dagmo.
Thank you very much, Speaker. On behalf of the ANC, I move without notice that this House notes with deep sadness the passing of the legendary human rights lawyer and anti-apartheid activist Advocate George Bizos, and in sending its sincere condolences to the family, friends, and comrades, further notes the immense contribution made in defense of the victims of apartheid over decades, as well as the astute defense provided to leaders of the ANC and the broader liberation movement. Notes that his life was one of sacrifice, in that he forsook privilege and took hands with all South Africans committed to establishing a united, non-racial, democratic, non-sexist South Africa, and further that this House expresses the wish that the legal profession of today continue to try and emulate his example of selfless service to the most vulnerable in our society who seek access to justice. Rest in peace, Advocate Bizos. Hamagahle Mkonto, I so move.
Thank you, Honorable the Leader of the Opposition. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice?
No, Mr. Speaker. Just a point of clarification, Mr. Speaker, if I may.
Yes, Honorable Minister Fritz.
I think that was now the 4th motion with the same topic, and I mean we all completely concur with the sentiments that's been expressed. Isn't there a rule of limit to all the stuff?
Yes. Honorable Minister Fritz, yes, there are 4. I have no guarantee that we don't have 4 more. And the problem here is that honorable members craft them the way they want, and they are all different, structured for the same person. Until the rules that we're busy reviewing, led by Honorable Mitchell, tells us otherwise, then the Rules Committee must guide us and lead us in this process. And then only then shall we arrive at a different conclusion. For now, it is in line with the rules.
Thank you.
May I...
Patient.
Thank you, honorable members. May I put the question again? Are there any objections to the motion being read without notice?
No objections.
No objections. Motion agreed to. Order, honorable members, the ones in the chamber. Order. You see, I've got 2 houses, the virtual and the chamber, so I need to indicate which one I'm addressing. Honorable Leke, your hand is still up. Is it inadvertently up? can I lower it for you?
Yes, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for allowing me to lower your hand, Honorable Lecker. Now, I recognize Honorable Van Vogel.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the ANC, I move without notice that this legislature notes the 22 COVID-19 related deaths yesterday in the Western Cape pushed the total to over 4,000 patients that died, and that the total now stand at 4,060 mortalities, and that this province had a total of 107,624 confirmed cases since the pandemic spilled over to the Western Cape. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Van Vogel. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Kama.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the African National Congress, I move a motion without notice that this House notes various rogue EFF sympathizers were arrested demonstrating at Clicks outlets in George on Monday and Goodwood on Tuesday. Also note the reports which indicate to one incident a Port Elizabeth old lady waved a gun and caused panic. Applaud SAPS for bringing the situation to calm and making the necessary arrests. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Kama. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Mvimbi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I move a motion without notice that the legislator know that the Archbishop Emeritus of the Anglican Church, Desmond Tutu, and his wife Leah Tutu escaped unscathed after their retirement house in Hermanas caught fire on Wednesday due to a faulty gas heater, and wishes them well for the rest of their retirement. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Kama, Honorable Mvimbi. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Pans.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. On behalf of the African National Congress, I move without notice that this legislature notes 2 years ago dams in the province were at an all-time low due to a severe drought. But thanks to good rainfall recently, most of the dams in the province are almost full or overflowing, the best in years, and calls on all residents to use this natural resource with caution. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Pans. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Kama.
Thank you very much, Speaker. On behalf of the ANC, I move a motion without notice that this House notes a Pontiavel shooting killed a 25-year-old woman, Shakina Karim, who early on Sunday morning sat in her car when shots were fired. Call on all involved in the criminal justice system to ensure that justice prevails. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Kama. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Van Vogel.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the ANC, I move without notice that this legislature notes a former worker at the George Hospital has been sentenced to 10 years in prison, of which 5 years is suspended. Beside this sentence for tender fraud, Jacob Claassen also got 5 years suspended time for corruption and 36-month correctional service, a form of house arrest. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Van Vogel. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Kama.
Thank you, Speaker. I move a motion without notice that this House notes the Western Cape Police are looking for two men who is said to shoot and killed a Malawi national shop owner near Wilderness in Ranton during a robbery. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Kama. Honorable members, are there no objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Smith.
Thank you, Speaker. I move a motion without notice that this legislature notes an entrepreneur lost all his savings of 87,000 Rand. He paid for a so-called tender project to Cape Town officials only to find out it is a scam. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Smith. Honorable members, are there no objections to the motion being read without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Said.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move without notice that this legislature notes that the African National Congress maintains that a proper investigation should be held to examine the backroom extension of the Education Head of Department's contract by the Honorable Premier Alan Winde and by the Minister of Education in the province. That includes at least the Public Service Commission, and welcomes the Education Standing Committee meeting that is to take place next Tuesday with the Premier and with the Education MEC on this matter. I so move.
Objection. Object. You must get the facts first.
Thank you, Honorable Member Said. There's an objection.
Can they speak?
Order, Honorable members. Order. There's an objection, and the motion will be printed in the order paper. I now recognize Honorable Kama. Honorable Kama, are you winning there? All right, let us proceed.
Speaker, I'm done, Speaker, sorry.
All right. I recognize you, Honorable Kama. Please proceed.
Speaker, I was indicating that I'm done with my motions.
Okay, we've recorded that now. You remember the other day you said you were done and you were not. Thank you, Honorable Kama. Honorable members, I recognize Honorable Said.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move without notice that this legislature notes the inhumane evictions in Hamburg that are taking place under the DA-led City of Cape Town, which is a violation of the court order in favor of the Human Rights Commission. I so move.
Object.
Object.
Honorable Said, there's an objection. Your motion will be printed in the order paper. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Lecker. Honorable the Chief Whip of the Opposition.
My apologies, Mr. Speaker. I hereby move that the legislature notes the heartfelt so-called policy conference held by the DA over the weekend, that no policy was produced, and that disposed of, and notes the problem-ridden DA is still like a ship without a rudder on the stormy seas. I so move.
Objection, and the ANC is without a captain.
Order, honorable members.
Object. Focus on ACE and
honorable members. Honorable Leke, there's an objection.
Why did you put
Your motion will be printed in the order paper. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Said.
Honourable Speaker, I move without notice that this legislature commends the grade 12Q class of the Windsor High School in Rondebosch East for the spirit of Ubuntu to come to the rescue of a disadvantaged learner who lost his cell phone in a robbery and could not afford a special matric jacket by collecting enough money to replace his phone, buy the jacket and donate the rest of the money to him. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Said. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read without notice?
No, but they didn't socially distance, but no objection.
No objections. Motion agreed to. I now recognize Honorable Nkondlo.
Thank you, Speaker. I move that the House notes the 51% decline of GDP in Q2 as reported by Stats SA this week. Further notes, many economists and experts had cautioned that this represents annualized performance, which means, as per Philippe Berger, Vice Dean, Faculty of Economics and Management Sciences at the University of the Free State, the annualized number means what would the yearly decline be if Q1, Q2 rate of decline extended for a year, and calls on the DA to stop its pedestrian posturing informed by its desperation to deliberately misconstrue economic data and score cheap political points as they dismally fail to be of any true alternative to SA political and economic realities. I so move.
Objection.
Thank you, Honorable Nkondlo. As there are objections to the motion, it will be printed in the order paper. I now recognize Honorable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much again, Speaker. I move on behalf of the ANC without notice that this House notes with deep sadness the passing of Ahmad Dango, writer, poet, and activist, as well as the former CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, and expresses its sincere condolences to his wife, Audrey, son, Zachary, and the broader family and comrades. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Dagmo. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Nkondlo.
Thank you, Speaker. That was my last motion. I don't have any other. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Nkondlo. Honorable Leka.
Honorable Speaker.
Honorable members. Order, honorable members. Honorable Mackenzie.
Honorable Speaker, definitely no objection to the motion by Member Darkmore, but you didn't ask if there was any member objecting to it. But there's definitely no objection to it, but just as a matter of process.
Is there an objection to the motion? All right, let me do this, honorable members. Thanks, Honorable Mackenzie. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being read by Honorable Dagmo without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. Thank you, Honorable Mackenzie and honorable members. Honorable Member Lek, the Chief Whip of the Opposition.
I'm done, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Okay, honorable members, that concludes the motions without notice. And now we deal with the order of the day. I recognize the Secretary.
Consideration of report of the Conduct Committee on the failure of Honorable Member G. Brinkhuis to submit disclosure forms timeously 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Honorable members, I've been informed by the Chief Whip that the Programming Authority resolved that there will be no speakers list and that parties who wish to do so would be afforded an opportunity now to make declaration of the vote for a maximum of no more than 3 minutes. Now I give an opportunity to the ANC. and that is if you so wish to speak. The ANC, none. The EFF is absent for today. The Good Party.
No, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Heron. ACDP.
Thank you, Speaker. The ACDP concur with the report from the Conduct Committee. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. FF Plus, Honorable Murray, are you on the virtual platform? All right. Thank you, Honorable Murray. Honorable Brankes Aljama. Thank you. The TA.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, at a conduct committee held on the 15th of May 2020, the Registrar for Members' Interest, Advocate Burgers, presented a report on members' submission of disclosure forms for the 2020 calendar. In the presentation of the Registrar's report, only one member, the Honourable Brinkhuis, failed to submit disclosure forms timeously, as is required in terms of the Provincial Code of Conduct. The committee then deliberated on the matter of the Registrar's report and found that by failing to return his disclosure forms timeously, the Honourable Member was in breach of Section 11, subsection 2 of the Provincial Code of Conduct. This decision concurred with the recommendation of the Registrar that the Honourable Member Brinkhuis had indeed breached the code by failing to submit his declarations timeously. The Honourable Member was then afforded the opportunity to make written submissions in mitigation of the penalty to be recommended by the Conduct Committee and was given 7 days to provide such. Member Brinkhuis explained that he struggled to obtain his completed forms from his office at 7 Wales Street, Cape Town, due to the national lockdown, and on the 11th of May 2020 he obtained access to 7 Wales Street and submitted his completed forms on the said day. It must be noted, Speaker, that the Honourable Member apologised for the late submission. The matter was then deliberated on by the Conduct Committee on 14 August 2020, in which we considered the reasons provided by the Honourable Brinkhuis and took into consideration that the fact that this is the member's first time of contravening the code and had shown contrition. During these deliberations, the committee resolved to recommend that Honourable Brinkhuis receives a reprimand in terms of Section 32, subsection 1 of the Provincial Code of Conduct. I therefore encourage this House to accept the recommendation of the committee. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Mitchell. Honourable members, are there no objections to the report being adopted?
No.
No objections. The report is agreed then, is agreed to. Now, at this point, honourable members, I would like to thank the honourable members who attended the memorial service for the late former Deputy Speaker Wompit Mayor, and also request that the honourable members who wish to sign the condolences book, which has been provided for this purpose, do so as you leave the chamber, so that we are able to hand it over to the family. For the members who are not here today, there will be an opportunity to do so. You'll be advised by the administration on the cut-off date. I've communicated with them, but the details will be communicated to the members. At this point, honourable members, we have concluded our business and the House is adjourned.
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Speaker.